I don't know why I'm beatboxing. TalkShoe makes you wait 30 seconds before they go live. We are already live on Restream. We'll probably will be live on TalkShoe shortly. We do have some exciting stuff coming up today.
Recording started.
Now we're live on TalkShoe. Super Bowl game recap, a Chiefs offseason preview, an Eagles offseason preview, and I'm coding some combine stuff. But yeah, this was a very bland Super Bowl. And a blowout can be fun if you have no dog in the fight. Like, I'll give you a few examples of Super Bowls I watched where I didn't really have a dog in the fight, but it was a fun game.
Better because there was zero blitzes. It was all four-man rushing. That is amazing considering the pressure the Eagles put on the Chiefs.
It is.
That is an amazing.
It is an amazing feat, and not to take anything away from the Eagles, but you look at I basically said during the Super Bowl that I expected the Stanley Cup, the NBA Finals, the World Series, MLS Cup, WNBA Finals to be more competitive than this year's Super Bowl, because this year's Super Bowl set a really low bar. At the same token, I can see how this game was entertaining if you didn't have a dog in the fight, because there were some blowouts that were entertaining. Super Bowls. Like, I'll give you three examples. The Ravens-49ers game, it was a blowout initially, but it was entertaining after the power outage, even with all the drama involved. The Super Bowl after that, Super Bowl 48, was entertaining too, because that was my first Super Bowl away from my parents' house in college. And whenever the Seahawks got a turnover or a safety, everyone in Rhodes Hall at Slippery Rock was rowdy as fuck. And that made the Super Bowl party that much better. The experience that much better. I watched we had like a pool where you won money for the Super Bowl 54 at my friend's house. That was fun. Super Bowl 55 featured my favorite QB of all time in Brady, and my current favorite QB in the league in Mahomes. So even though it was a 31-9 blowout, that game was entertaining. That game was still more entertaining than this game. For me, anyway. I'm not here to take anything away from the Eagles, but I'm just saying, if there's a matchup where you don't really feel like you have a dog in the fight, it can be entertaining. A blowout can be entertaining if you don't have a dog in the fight. I felt bad for the Eagles after Super Bowl 39. That changed after Super Bowl 52 when we lost to a backup QB. But I'm happy for Jalen Hurts because he did do an interview with us before this 2020 Senior Bowl. I am happy for Jalen Hurts. I'm also happy for Cooper DeJean. That's the one thing I did correctly. I did say it'd be pretty hilarious if Cooper DeJean got a pick six in the Super Bowl on his birthday, which actually happened. I made a joke about how it'd be cool if Clark cheered for DeJean in that moment, then Swift got pissed off and kicked her out of the booth. I did make a joke about that last week. That did not happen, but the Cooper DeJean pick six did happen. And that was really the icebreaker for this game. But this was kind of a bland Super Bowl for me. I would say this was the worst Super Bowl, even worse than 48 or 55. I could see why it's entertaining for people who hate the Chiefs. I get that. I do. But at the same token, I thought this was the least entertaining Super Bowl I've watched in my life. So that's just... And the Eagles had an excellent game plan. They got off to a 34-0 lead, and they pretty much put this game out of reach for the Chiefs. So they had an excellent game plan. We're not taking anything away from the Eagles. And why is there Super Bowl 58 gear for the Chiefs on Draft Utopia webpage? That needs to go the fuck down for the Super Bowl 59 page. I'm just curious. Why is that up there? Like, how? No, you do not get a Super Bowl banner at Chiefs Kingdom. You don't get that. You've lost that privilege by losing in the fashion you lost the game in. But I don't know what... Okay, so I'm guessing the ad was right here. And I'm hoping I'm right on this. But, that's just like... No, you've lost that privilege. Okay, there it is. It's gone. But yeah. I thought DeJean should have been MVP, but I get making Hurts the MVP. And this was just... the Eagles did an excellent job. The front seven did an excellent job. They were able to get And the Eagles were on a 34, but they were able to put 3-man, 4-man pressures without blitzing. Their game plan was masterful. The Chiefs, though, the body language is what I want to take away, Joey, because I know there's some details you want to get into. The body language was my big takeaway because coming out of the locker room, usually you can tell who's going to win a Super Bowl just by who comes out of the locker room. In most cases, there's a team that looks defeated, a team that looks nervous, a team that looks like they failed to meet expectations coming out of the locker room, and then there's another team that looks relaxed, looks like there's less pressure on them. And the team that's usually comes out of the locker room relaxed wins the Super Bowl more times than not. And that was the case with this one because Mahomes, Travis Kelce, Andy Reid, they had this defeated look on their face coming out of the locker room, and the Eagles were relaxed. And before I get into that in greater detail, I want to mention that the team that's practiced in the Super Bowl stadium has won every Super Bowl dating back to Super Bowl 54. Chiefs practiced at Hard Rock Cafe Stadium. The 49ers did not. The Buccaneers practiced at Raymond James Stadium. The Chiefs did not. The Rams practiced at SoFi Stadium for Super Bowl 56. The Bengals did not. For 57, the Chiefs got to practice in State Farm Stadium. The Eagles had to go to Sun Devil Stadium. For Super Bowl 58, the Chiefs got Allegiant Stadium. The 49ers had to go to the UNLV practice facility where I covered the East-West Shrine Bowl. The Chiefs had to go to Tulane this year. The Eagles got to practice in the Superdome all week. I'm not saying that's an advantage, but recent trends and recent Super Bowls have shown that we need to put a little bit more stock into that than we do. We don't have to put all our eggs in that basket, but we need to pay a little bit more attention to that leading up to the big game, Joey. So those are just some brief thoughts on the Super Bowl. Not only with we got to pay more attention to who's practicing in the stadium the week of the Super Bowl, but just, you know, the overall game plan, the overall quality of the game. Because this was not a quality game for me. But if you don't have a dog in this fight, it can be entertaining. What do you want to add? Because
I do want to both agree and disagree with your assessment. Body language is key, particularly Mahomes himself was to come. They believe they come back home. But look at their faces, their body language, where the body language
yeah, because the body language for Nick Sirianni pre-game 57 versus pre-game 59 is completely different. It looks like he's crying in the pre-game of 57, whereas the Chiefs looked more relaxed. Whereas this game, Sirianni was calm as hell, wasn't really thinking about what was going to happen. The Eagles came in with this we got nothing to lose and everything to gain mentality, because if we lose, okay, the Chiefs are the first team in the league to three-peat, but if we win, we capitalize in our moment. And it really felt like there was more pressure on the Chiefs to win versus the Eagles. There really wasn't any pressure on the Eagles to win this, and it showed.
yes, I agree with your thoughts of body mentality. But at the same time, I have a thought process and better body language. And people were at a half.
All right. I'm just seeing if William said I could call him on the phone if he doesn't show up on time, but I'm not sure which number is the actual number, because there's two numbers for him in my contact, and that's what's confusing. All right, I will try one of these numbers, and if doesn't respond, I will go into the Chiefs Eagles because he did say to ring him up if he's sleeping in or if he's late or whatever, because he did want to call in last night.
Your call has been forwarded to an auto.
All right, so he's not available at the moment. So I'm going to pull up the salary caps for the Chiefs. And yeah, I am going to pull up the Chiefs salary cap here and the contract situations for the Kansas City Chiefs, because I think it's, it's going to be, because these are the last two teams we got to preview, the Chiefs and the Eagles. And then we are pretty much done previewing teams. We're pretty much done previewing teams after that. But the Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes is going to be making $66 million. I'm sure he's going to restructure some of that. He might. I don't know how much he's going to restructure, but I've already heard Chris Jones is willing to restructure. So if Chris Jones is willing to restructure, I'm willing to bet Mahomes restructures too to give the Chiefs more money. We're going to get to the Eagles after we get to the Chiefs because we're doing the contracts now. No, we segued out of the Super Bowl game recap, and Hurts did win MVP. I went with Cooper DeJean for player of the game, but we are pivoting to the contract section for the Chiefs. So save that for when we get to the Eagles. Save it. Don't worry. All right. Mahomes, $66 million. I think he's going to restructure. I think that's going to come down to 50 or 40 million, and they're going to roll over the money because Mahomes' contract runs through 2032. You've got 66, 68, 64 million over the next 3 years, and then it comes down to 32, 34, 45, 48 million until 2032 when he becomes a UFA. So I do think the Chiefs are going to try to roll over some money into 2028 if they can. They're going to try to get Mahomes to restructure so they can roll over some of the money into 2028, into 2029. Because these next 3 years, these are the worst. These are the hardest years of the deal. This is where the bulk of the money for this contract that Mahomes signed back after Super Bowl 54 comes into play. This is where the bulk of the money comes into play. Carson Wentz is a UFA. He's going to be gone. Backup QB will be needed with Mahomes turning 30. Isaiah Pacheco, Carson Steele, are both going to be back. Keontae Ingram's not going to be back. They did cut Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Kareem Hunt's also a UFA. I do think the Chiefs are going to get a third running back in the draft, a guy they can ease in year one, and if Pacheco doesn't agree to a deal on their terms, they'll let him walk, and the rookie and Steele will split carries next year. That's what I think the Chiefs are going to do at running back. So Pacheco and Steele are the only two under contract. Now, wide receiver, you have Worthy under contract for 3 more years plus the 5th-year tender. You have Rashee Rice under contract for 2 more years. Assuming he doesn't get suspended and he's healthy, it's going to be Worthy and Rice on rookie deals next year. You're going to have Sky Moore as your slot. You're going to have Justin Ross, practice squad guy, back, and you're going to have Hopkins is gone, Juju is gone, and Justin Watson's gone. So those 3 are all UFAs, Joey. So the Chiefs do lose a lot of their depth at wide receiver, but they still have Worthy and Rice and rookie deals. And right now, if Hopkins leaves or retires, you're looking at Sky Moore versus Justin Ross for the slot receiver job. That's really what you're looking at. Maybe Tyquan Thornton.
He may lose a lot of their depth. They have some young talent too. And this year, it's not the best year for young talent at wide receiver, but it's a nice year in the draft for wide receiver. I mean, they can get a very good young talent.
They need a number 3 receiver. It's not like they need a number 1 or number 2. If if Rice avoids a suspension, stays healthy, and Worthy's healthy, they just need a slot receiver or a guy to push Sky Moore, Thornton, and Ross for that slot job. It's not like, and they can get that in this draft. They can get that in this draft. Okay.
Yeah, they're not drowning for talent at wide receiver. They just need a little bit of depth. Okay, you can get a very nice talent.
If they needed a number 1 or number 2 receiver, they would have to either get that in free agency or the first round, Joey. But if they don't need that. They can just wait for the right value to come across. Tight end, the Chiefs are giving Travis Kelce until March 14th to decide whether he wants to retire or come back. I think they are secretly hoping he retires so they don't have to buy him out. But at the same token, if he does come back,
They think he's going to retire. I think they think he's going to retire because last year he was going to retire before Patrick Mahomes was like, Travis, come on, man, we can do this one more time. We can repeat and so on and so forth. And, you know, Mahomes and Kelce are best friends. So it's like, he's like, man, okay. I don't think he's going to be able to do that this year. I think Travis is like, okay, Taylor and I are secretly, not so secretly, getting engaged or whatever it is. Or I'm looking at going into a new part of my life. You know, everything is a little bit different now. Man, I did this for you 1 year. Didn't quite work out the way we wanted. But this year, well, you did my wedding party, but dude, I can't do it anymore. And it's like, look, dude, Gray over here. He's a good receiver. He has done a lot of good things.
and you got Jared Wiley on a rookie deal too. I don't like Wiley as a number 1 tight end, but I've always thought Noah Gray's had potential to be a number 1 tight end. He's learned under Kelce for many years.
Noah Gray is a number 1 tight end. Noah Gray is a number 1 tight end in this league.
He is. And Wiley could be a good number 2 tight end, but he got eased in this year, which was great for him. That was perfect for him. It was the perfect situation for him because he's had potential to be a number 2 tight end, but he's kind of raw, needs to start out as number 3, and that's what happened with Wiley. So it was literally the perfect situation for him.
Yeah. It's like I tell people at work who are Taylor Swift fans, look, I don't like her music, but she seems like a really nice lady. And I'm, as a fellow Ohioan, I've always been a fan of the Swift brothers, and I love how they do things, so I'm really happy for them. And I really feel good that, in the sense that he did his best friend a solid coming back. And I think it was a great thing not only for him but for the team. So I can't be upset, but I do think it's Jason retired last year. He and Travis have been doing this podcast, which is amazing.
The New Heights podcast, they had LeBron on the week of the AFC Championship, and they had the Manning brothers on the week of the Super Bowl. So they actually...
and as entertaining as Travis is, Jason's just that much more entertaining. So.
And the fact that the Chiefs are giving him a deadline tells me they're ready to move on from him. They're ready to move on from him, even if he decides he wants to come back. That's what that tells me, because I'm looking at this. I'm looking at the contracts for the tight ends. Travis Kelce, $19,801,000, $4.5 million for Noah Gray, $1.1 million for Wiley. And then when Kelce's a UFA in 2026, Noah Gray's worth $7 million and 26 and 27, and then 1.2 and 1.3 for Wiley. So very good, very flexible deals at the tight end spot, even if you move on from Kelce.
I don't think it's as much of a hard line for the team as much it is an how can I put this? I think it's as much an acknowledgement from the team. It's like, dude, we know you want to retire. We knew you wanted to retire last year. So we're going to get the most relief if you retire before this date. If you retire before this date, you did Travis a solid last year by coming back. You can do us a solid by retiring by this date. So here you are. And I don't think the acknowledgement of them knowing he's done and wanting to move on, I think the acknowledgement of knowing, dude, we know what you want. We know you want to walk off into the sunset. We're going to give you this job. All we ask is that you do it solid. And I think that's it. I think there's a lot of mutual respect there. And I don't think anything can be contentious. I think they're just going to be like, you know what? It's been a fun ride.
Yeah.
But everybody they want, and we just asked. I mean, you did pass us a solid. Just do us a solid, and we'll put you in the T string of honor. You're going to be a Hall of Famer, and you know we'll honor you and treat you with the honor.
Right now, if Kelsey comes back, he's expected to take up 7.2% of the cap space. I think they would be willing to have Kelsey back, but they'd want him to restructure to where he only takes up 5% of the cap space. And if he's unwilling to do that, he should just retire.
I think the only way he would come back is if Patrick was like really into it, like really grills him. It's like, I will not only be in your wedding party, I will pay for a fucking wedding. Just come back to us. It's like, you know, and something extreme like that. Because he was going to retire last year, and he did his best friend a solid. So I think the only way he's going to come back is if, you know, Patrick Mahomes does something.
He broke Tony Gonzalez's record for touchdowns. He broke the Gonzalez record for most touchdowns in Chiefs history. 3-time Super Bowl champion. What's left for him to accomplish? I mean,
yeah, it's like he only, you know, he could have left last year, and he was happy to leave last year. But so I don't think there is anything unless Patrick's like, I'm going to pay for your wedding in the Bahamas. I'm going to pay for your honeymoon in Cancun. If you just come back to us for one more year. It's like, Taylor, do you really want me to come back one more year? He's going to pay for all our shit. You know, it's like, at that point, it's like, you're about to marry, potentially, the greatest marketer in the history of the music industry outside of Dre. Because her music is not as good as the money she's worth. But she can market that shit as well as anybody in the history of music. And it is proven. She is outside of Dre. And you're telling her, honey, Patrick's probably going to own several teams by the time he retires, and he's going to pay for everything. Let's say we save this money on all this, let him pay for it, I come back one more year, and we buy the Chiefs when the Hunts retire or die. Okay.
I could see that.
Like, it's just so. Him coming back would have to have such a.
Yeah, even though the Chiefs only have $5 million in cap space right now, they have $77 million for 2026, and that number, that $5 million is going to go up with Chris Jones restructuring. We don't know how much he's agreed to restructure, but I would imagine that number. He said he's restructuring.
And Chris Jones restructuring fishing was also because I've heard they want to bring back Cream Hunt, because Cream Hunt is a touchdown machine in the red zone. And they need that stability, even though they couldn't use it in the Super Bowl because they were getting their asses kicked. You know, and I heard they want to do some other things with the cast and with a couple of their free agents.
Actually, according to Sports Illustrated here, if with Chris Jones restructuring, the Chiefs would save $20,696,250. So that takes them up to $25.6 million instead of and if Kelsey retires, you're going to get whatever you paid Kelsey on top of that. Whatever you had paid Kelsey, you're going to get that back. So $19.8 million. So you're going to, if Kelsey retires and with the Chris Jones restructuring, bumping the Chiefs up from 5 to 25 million, you're going to have essentially 46 million to play, 46,500,000 to play with. Assuming this
because these guys are really
I will get to the offensive line in a second, but I just wanted to bring that up quickly with the those two dominoes with Jones restructuring, saving the Chiefs an additional 20 million, and Kelsey retiring, which is 19.8 million. That actually takes the Chiefs up to 47.4 million. I was wrong when I said it was 46.5 million because 25.6 plus 19.8, I believe that's 40. I believe that's 44.7 or 40. I don't know. I'm not going to plug in a calculator right now, but yeah.
Role is not because Mahomes, Kelsey, or anybody with you. It is because 5 guys, sometimes 6 guys, couldn't block 4 guys. I mean, so you're going to have to look at those offensive tackles.
Oh, and the Chiefs, they can buy out Jawan Taylor in 2026, and they save $20 million in cap space. So they are stuck with the Jawan Taylor contract for one more year in 2025, but they can get out of it and they save $20 million in 2026 just for buying out Taylor, which I can pretty much assure you is going to happen. That is pretty much.
Because of 1 year of good production. Oh, how right. Because we're like, okay, how much are they going to have?
Because he did well the year the Chiefs won Super Bowl 57. I think he did well that year, but he was awful in 2024, and he was awful in 2023 and in 2024. But I think 2022, yeah, because 22 may have been the year I think Jawan Taylor was on the Jaguars the year. The year he was on the Jaguars the year they made the divisional round and played the Chiefs, and he did okay his first year with the Chiefs when he was only worth 5.8 million, but then he was worth 19.3 million, and he did awful in 2024, and he's going to be worth 27.391 million in 25 and 26, and you can't buy him out until 2026. You lose 7 million if you buy out Taylor, so you're stuck with that contract for one more year. Thuney enters the final year of a contract, but the Chiefs, they're going to have 77 million to spend. They can extend Thuney this offseason. It'll limit their cap space, but with 77 million, I do think that's something Veach is going to prioritize, and I would say a 2 or 3 year extension for Thuney. Kind of like what Bitonio got in Cleveland. I would say that's probably what we're looking at with Thuney, because he's making 26.9 million with the Chiefs, but enters the final year of a deal. You still have Wanya Morris and Kingsley Suamadi on rookie deals. You could get a left tackle in the draft. You can move Thuney to left tackle. You could reload at guard. Trey Smith's a UFA. You're probably losing Trey Smith.
Chris, I will say this about time. Tom Brady actually turned in during the game on him, but he is playing out of position. He needs to be moved back inside because
I don't remember Thunny playing left tackle in New England. They had Nate Soldier and they had some other guys. I thought Thunny was always a guard in New England.
yeah, he was a guard in New England. That's why Tom Brady said that, because in the Super Bowl he was playing.
He was playing left tackle. They moved him to left tackle the week they played the Browns. That's when they moved Thunny to left tackle. And they kept him there.
Tom was like, they can't do it. He is one of the best in the business. In guard, they cannot. He's in the left tackle. He has ever met.
And the two left tackles they drafted, Wanya Morris, Kingsley Suamadi, a 3rd and 2nd round picks, have both been bad. Both look like busts. So, do you really want to pump more money into that position? You kind of have to, but
yeah, you have to. It's like when somebody says, "Do the Browns want to pump more money into the quarterback position?" Yeah, you kind of have to.
There are rumors that the Chiefs are going to make a play for Ronnie Stanley. There are rumors that the Chiefs are going to make a play for Ravens left tackle Ronnie Stanley. Now, if Kelsey retires and Chris Jones, Kelsey retires, they have the money to do that because right now with the Chris Jones restructuring, they're at $25 million. Kelsey retires, that goes up to $46 million. You could pay Ronnie Stanley what he wants and get him signed to Kansas City, and he's your left tackle, and then he's your left guard. And just like that, you've reloaded on the offensive line.
I thought Stanley was either in a contract for 1 more year or restricted.
No, he's a UFA. He's a UFA. He's a UFA in this free agency cycle. Ronnie Stanley's a UFA. And the Ravens only have $5 million to spend. We talked about this a few weeks ago when the Ravens got knocked out of the playoffs. The only way the Ravens can bring him back is if they traded Mark Andrews or Marlon Humphrey. That is legitimately the only way they can bring him back. And they're not trading Andrews. They're not trading Humphrey. So it sounds like...
Yeah, I remember that part of the discussion. I remember the Andrews part of the discussion. It's like, we were just like, hell no, that's not happening.
Yeah. So that might be that might be what Chiefs end up doing, because there's hot stove rumors that are saying Ronnie Stanley's going to go to the Chiefs. And he might. They've got the money to pay him. The other team that's going to have the money to pay him is the Commanders. So I think Ronnie Stanley's either going to end up on the Commanders. I would say Chiefs and Commanders at 2 most likely destinations for Ronnie Stanley. As much as I'd like to see him on the Patriots, I don't think it's going to happen. He hasn't won a Super Bowl yet. He's going to realize if he goes to Kansas City, that'll be his best path to one, and then the offense will be even harder to stop.
I look at Ronnie Stanley in the same vein I look at Myles Garrett. It's like their career's starting to, you're not quite what you were. You're getting up there in age. What is most important to you? Is it the contract? Is it the money? Or is it the ultimate goal of everybody who ever gets into football? You want to win a Super Bowl. What do you want with the rest of your career? So, just like Myles Garrett throws his foot in the sand, I think Ronnie Stanley's going to have to drag his foot in the sand and say, I will take less money.
Right now, his market value is $20.7 million. Yeah, he can get $25 to $30 million, but if he takes that, he's going to end up on the Commanders. If he's willing to take 20.7 on the dot or 21, 22 million, he'll end up in Kansas City on like a bridge deal.
If he's willing to take $15 million.
Not 15. That's way too low, Joey. His market value is 20.7.
I'm just thinking, if he's willing to if he wants a Super Bowl and they say
the Chiefs are not going to get. The Chiefs are not going to lowball him like that. 21 or 22 million.
But here's what I'm thinking, Chris. Here's what I'm thinking. If they say we'll give you 15, but we'll sign X, Y, Z, and a player that will help us get a Super Bowl with the money that we would have spent on you, and his goal is win a Super Bowl, then but you would have to make that guarantee.
That's not going to happen, and they can't make that guarantee because the player might choose to switch course. So he's going to get 20.7 minimum, and I think the Chiefs are willing to pay 21, 22 million.
Normally I'd agree, but especially in skill position players like.
It's not a good free agency class for tackles. It's not a good draft for tackles. So Ronnie Stanley does have all the leverage here. So this is why I disagree with you, Joey, because it's the market value. It's the market value.
I understand. It's like, I'm just saying, it's like, I'm bringing in the Patrick Mahomes back. It's like,
let's look at the market value here for Ronnie Stanley. 20.7 still the market value. 20.7 was Ronnie Stanley's market value last week. That is still the market value. You're going to get him for 20.7 million, and the Chiefs, you want to get him.
What is the greatest marketing factor that the Chiefs have for negotiations for a skill position player?
They have 46 million if Kelsey retires. If Kelsey does not retire, they're not going to get Ronnie Stanley. I'm just going to leave it at that. If Kelsey comes back, they are going to have to settle for someone else. They're going to have to take a flyer on someone and hope it works out.
I agree with that.
Because if Kelsey, because right now I'm looking at the market value. Cam Robinson's market value is 14 million. Ronnie Stanley's is 20.7. I think if Kelsey comes back, the Chiefs end up with Cam Robinson on a 1 or 2 year deal. And if Kelsey retires, they get Ronnie Stanley on a 3 or 4 year deal. Probably a 3 year deal.
Okay.
That's.
You avoided a roasting right there, Chris. You avoided a roasting, and I'm glad you said Cam Robinson, even though I'm not the biggest Cam Robinson fan. If you would have said Jedrick Wills, I would have roasted your.
I'm not even considering Wills. Wills is. I did not like Jedrick Wills coming out of the draft, Joey. I had Wirfs and Thomas as my top 2 tackles.
We're talking cap and free agents, and
he's not even in the discussion. Even if he takes under $1 million, I'm not paying him. I do not want Jedrick Wills. I do not want him, even if he's willing to take under $1 million. Okay.
You're a smart man for that. I commend you. You had me scared for a second because left tackle is not a great. It's not a great market this year.
It's Robinson and Stanley. It's Robinson and Stanley. And if Robinson and Stanley both if the Chris Jones restructure rumors turn out to be false, you're looking at Joseph Noteboom as your plan C. Because right now, Joseph Noteboom's market value is $1.9 million. It's $1.9 million because he missed all of last year with an injury, even though he was the Rams' left tackle after they won Super Bowl 56. So you're looking at Stanley, Robinson, Noteboom as the ABC, depending on what Chris Jones and Travis Kelce do. But that's probably you're looking at with the Chiefs.
Yeah, it's.
I don't think anyone else is in the discussion because Robinson made $18 million this year. Noteboom made $13.3 million, even though he didn't even play due to an injury. Stanley made $7.5 million. That number's going to go up. Tyron Smith, you could bring him back, but with his injuries history, I think that's. And his age, I just think that's too problematic. I'll pull up the Tyron Smith market value, but I think there's a clear ABC with Stanley, Robinson, Noteboom, because those are the ones listed. Tyron Smith's market value is $7.5 million. Yeah, that's too much for me. Too rich for my blood. I'd pay $4 or $5 million for Tyron Smith, but not $7.5 million. That's too much. Too much. No, not for Tyron Smith at his age.
I think we would put that in as an is the he got nothing else type deal.
Yeah.
Back pocket.
I don't even
Nothing
think
else?
I think Tyron Smith's going to be on the market, and he's either going to end up taking a team-friendly deal with the Patriots, or he's going to be like DJ Humphries this year, where he doesn't get signed until mid-season, and that's that. What is the?
Well, what would you rather have, him or fucking Christian, who's on the Rams practice squad last year?
I would rather have him over Christian. I was never a fan of Christian coming out of Louisville. I would rather have Noteboom. But yeah, Jedrick Will's market value is $2.2 million. I did double check. So Noteboom at 1.9 is worth less than Will's at 2.2, which I don't agree with. But that's because Will's is 25. That's why his market. Yeah, that's his market value.
Oh, that's way too much.
What is DJ Humphries' market value since he wants to come back to the Chiefs as the left tackle? 1.3. 1.3. That is a bargain for Humphries. I'm not saying Humphries. Yeah, I'll take Humphries over Wills for that price. Shit.
Absolutely. Absolutely. If Humphries wants to come back, give him 1.3 to 1.5 and say, there you go. Here's more. Because not only that, but if somebody passes Mahomes' truck. So it's not only a bargain, but it's somebody that the best quarterback in the game truck.
I will look at the market value for James Hudson. 1.1 million. Wow. That's the cheapest of all the tackles I've gone over. 1.1 million for Hudson. That's it. That's all Hudson costs.
Well, here's the thing with Hudson. Hudson is an amazing run blocker, but he is a turnstile.
I did not like him coming out of the draft because of his pass blocking. I did not like his pass blocking coming out of college. That hasn't changed. If you're looking for a swing tackle, that's excellent value. But if you're looking for a starting tackle, you should look elsewhere. That's all I'm going to say on that. And I feel like the Chiefs are looking for a starting left tackle more so than a backup or a swing tackle.
I have seen James Hudson run block and block somebody pretty fabulous downfield in the exact next play. It's a pass play, and the guy who is a backup rushes right around him, and he barely moves his feet. I mean, one of the best run blockers in the game, probably the worst pass blocker I've seen in 20 years. Yeah,
so for me right now, if I'm the Chiefs, Ronnie Stanley is plan A if Jones restructures and Travis Kelce retires. If Kelce comes back and Jones restructures, we're looking at Cam Robinson. If Jones doesn't restructure and Kelce comes back, we're looking at Joseph Noteboom or DJ Humphries, who's ever willing to take less money. And that's pretty much where I'm at. Tyron Smith's an emergency option, but only if he's willing to take $5 million or less. If he wants $7.5 million, we're gonna look at other options. And that's really all I'm considering for left tackle.
Yeah, because let's face it, Hudson and Wills are not starting caliber tackles.
They're not. They're not. And there's two guys in the market in Noteboom and Humphries who are better value. Noteboom's 1.3 million. Humphries is 1.2 million. And Wills is 2.2 million, but that's largely due to his age, the fact that he's 25, and the fact that his agent's Nicole Brown. That's largely why his market value is where it is.
Yeah, his age and the fact that everything is mental, and maybe somebody like Andy Reid can light a fire where nobody else in the NFL can. I doubt it, because I don't think he's mentally strong enough. Andy Reid would probably try to do it and eat 15 cheeseburgers and gain back all the weight he lost, simply trying to deal with that. You know, you got somebody.
I think the only way, I think the only team I'm pretty certain Dan Skipper is under contract with the Lions for next year, but if he's not, I think the only coach who could turn around Jedrick Wills is Dan Campbell, and they'd have to play him in a Dan Skipper type role as a swing tackle.
I didn't think about Dan Campbell. Yeah, Dan Campbell. If Dan Campbell can't light a fire under your ass, nobody can.
Yeah,
It's all about motivation, and Dan Campbell is like the ultimate motivator. I mean, if you can't play at a high level for Dan Campbell, you can't play in the NFL.
Yeah, the only team I could see him turning his career around with at this point is the Lions, and he'd have to be like a swing tackle like Dan Skipper.
I agree. And, let's look at Dan Campbell. He's kind of like the Steelers coach, isn't he?
Let me look at the market value for Dan Skipper. The market value for Dan Skipper is $2 million, which is less than Wills. So there's three guys in the market with lower market value than Jedrick Wills. Dan Skipper, $2 million, $1.3 million for Noteboom, and $1.2 million for DJ Humphries.
I'm surprised at that. I really like Dan Skipper. So it's like I like Skipper. He's a good player. I mean. So it's surprising that he is below Jedrick Wills.
Yeah.
Because I actually think outside of being a starter because you're a first-round pick, I think Skipper's unproven more than Wills has.
Dan Moore Jr., the Steelers left tackle who filled in with Fautanu being injured, as a market value of $12.6 million. No, we're not paying that. Sorry. I don't think he's worth that much. I think I had a 7th round grade on him. I know the Steelers took him in the 3rd or 4th round, but I don't think Dan Moore Jr. is worth $12.6 million, because I think the tackles the Steelers have, and Broderick Jones and Troy Fautanu, are better. They have more upside. I don't think think he's worth that much. I don't think he's worth $12.6 million, Dan Moore Jr.
I think Moore is a high-end swing tackle.
Yeah. I would put him in the $4 to $5 million range with Tyron Smith. I'm not going to put him in the $7.5 million range, but I'll say this: he's been more competent than Jedrick Wills. I would put him in the $4 to $5 million category, but that's just me. We'll get to the Chiefs defense now. McDuffie and Karlaftis are both going to get 5th-year tenders, which is going to lower the Chiefs' cap space from $77 million to whatever it is.
Karlaftis destroyed every AFC team he came across in the playoffs. I mean, Karlaftis is getting a massive extension. So
they're going to extend McDuffie and Karlaftis. They're going to extend both of them because McDuffie led the Chiefs with 11 deflections, and they didn't have a player. The Chiefs did not have a player with 10 or more sacks in the regular season this year. They had a player with 10 or more deflections in McDuffie. So I think McDuffie will be extended first, but they will try to extend both McDuffie and Karlaftis.
Karlaftis, because of his position, is going to be harder to fit into the cap. So, yeah, it's like McDuffie makes more sense to extend first.
Yeah.
Karlaftis,
I think McDuffie will get extended this offseason, and Karlaftis will get a 5th-year tender, but they will extend him next offseason. That's what I think they're going to do, because they have 2 first-round picks. They don't have to rush this.
I just say don't wait too long, Karlaftis.
Yeah, I agree.
He comes out next, like 3 sacks in the first 4 games.
Because Karlaftis is only 24 and McDuffie's already 25. That's the other thing. Mike Donna's under contract for 2 more years at right end. Karlaftis at left end. Onudike Uzoma, your backup right end's under contract, and Chris Jones. But Chris Jones is right now with Tershawn Wharton and Derek Nottie set to be UFAs. Right now, the only other 2 defensive tackles on the roster besides Chris Jones are Siaki Ika, who the Browns cut on the Chiefs practice squad, and Fabian Lovett. So both practice squad guys. So right now, those are the guys you have starting next to Chris Jones, unless you bring back Noddy on a team-friendly deal or you bring back Wharton on a team-friendly deal, which I do think they're going to bring one of them back.
Yeah, and I agree.
You're going to have Drew Tranquil. He took over at weak side linebacker for Willie Gay Jr. He'll probably move to Mike, and they'll probably move Leo Chenal to the weak side, or they'll move Chenal to Mike, and they'll play Tranquil. But I think those two will be the main starters. And then you'll have McDuffie, Williams, Watson, Connor, a number of those corners starting. And then you'd have Brian Cook and Jaden Hicks. Hicks would probably take over for Justin Reed at strong safety on his rookie deal, with Cook playing free safety. I think that's what they're going to do. And I would get another defensive back to pair with McDuffie, because I feel like if you pay McDuffie and then you just allow these guys to play out their rookie deals and Justin Reed leaves, I feel like that could close your Super Bowl window in a sense. But we'll see. Harrison Butker's back at kicker. But yeah. Anything you want to say about the Chiefs before we get to the Eagles contracts? Because I think the Chiefs are in a position where you need backup QB, running back depth, wide receiver depth, tight end, third string tight end if Kelsey retires. You got to fix left tackle. You're going to have to fix right guard with Trey Smith leaving. You're going to have to fix middle line. You're going to have to get linebacker depth. You're not in a bad situation, but I think that first round pick's got to be used on an offensive lineman. And I would use day 2 picks on defensive backs if I'm the Chiefs, because if you get a player like a Benjamin Morrison, you hit on that pick, you have a 1 and 2 corner. And then if you get somebody like Sebastian Castro and Clay Webb, you get your safety replacement to Reed, and you get Clay Webb can play any of the 3 spots on the interior. So that's what I'm looking at if I'm the Chiefs. But yeah, what do you want to add to that before we get to the Eagles contracts?
So I think we hit all the major points on the Chiefs contract.
Yeah. And the Eagles are up next. I'm pulling up the contract. Spot track. I want you to stay on the Eagles. Yes, here we go. It's trying to move away from that. But yeah, Hurts is going to be back. Kenny Pickett is going to be back. Kenny Pickett now has more Super Bowl rings than Dan Marino. Completely unnecessary shade, but both quarterbacks did go to Pittsburgh. Pickett and Tanner McKee also. I thought Tanner McKee, it's weird because they brought Tanner McKee in as he started the final game of the regular season. He wasn't bad in that game, but yeah, Pickett was the backup in the Super Bowl, got some snaps in the game. Pickett does have a 5th-year option, but I don't think the Eagles are going to exercise it, and they're just going to roll with Tanner McKee after the season. Because right now with McKee, you're only paying him $1,776,000, $1,191,000. You're paying Pickett $2.6 million. I think, and he's the same age as Hurts now, which is, he's going to be the same age as Hurts in June. So Saquon Barkley is, wait, I thought Saquon Barkley signed a 5-year deal last offseason. They voided 3 years of that already. No, he only signed a 3-year deal with the Eagles. But initially it looked like they were going to sign him until 2030. But it was only a 3-year deal with a buyout in 2026. So if Barkley struggles next year, well, no, they can't buy him out because there's more dead cap attached to the contract. So they're stuck with the contract until 2027. But you're probably looking at re-signing him to a 2-year deal if he does well next year too with this group. It just depends. But Barkley and Shipley are going to be back. Kenneth Gainwell's gone, but it's going to be Barkley and Shipley. They're going to be the 1-2 punch. Gainwell's probably going to leave, and they're going to get another running back in the draft. Brown, Smith, Dotson are going to be back. Johnny Wilson, Anis Smith are going to be back. The Eagles have 5 receivers. Goddard enters a contract year. Grant Calcaterra is back. Cameron Latu and EJ Jenkins are competing for third string tight end. They could get another tight end to push those two in the draft on day 3 if the value's there, but I don't think it's an immediate need. But they could go with a tight end on day 2 because Howie Roseman, he tries to figure out when a player is going to peak, and he gets the player a year or two early. So I wouldn't be surprised if the Eagles used a 3rd-round pick on a tight end, knowing Roseman's tendency in that respect. Mailata, Lane Johnson, Landon Dickerson, Cam Jurgens, all back. Only offensive lineman the Eagles lose is right guard Mekhi Beck, but they still have Tyler Steen on a rookie deal. So, yeah. Darian Kennard, he won 2 Super Bowls with the Chiefs. He won 1 with the Eagles as a practice squad guy. He's back for depth. So is Trevor Keegan. But yeah, that's the Eagles pretty much enter the offseason in a very good position. Jalen Carter will be back at 34 right end. Jordan Davis will be back at nose tackle. Milton Williams will not be back at 34 left end, but Moro Ojomo probably takes over at 34 left end. Eagles let Milton Williams walk. That's kind of what I'm suspecting will happen. Because Moro Ojomo showed some nice, even though Moro Ojomo was a backup, he showed a lot of promise in the Super Bowl. So I think he'll take over for Milton Williams with 2 years left on his rookie deal next year. They also got Byron Young from the Raiders as the backup defensive lineman for depth. Brandon Graham will probably retire after this year. Josh Sweat, UFA. You have Nolan Smith, but you don't have that guy next to Nolan Smith. I'm guessing Bryce Huff and Nolan Smith are going to be the starting 34 outside linebackers because you paid Nolan Smith all that money, but he was a number 3 pass rusher on the Eagles last year. I've always viewed him as a good number 3, but I've never really viewed him as a 1 or 2. But it sounds like Huff and Smith are going to be the starters. They might get an outside linebacker, but they'll ease him in. They're not going to rush him. Nakobe Dean, Jeremiah Trotter Jr. will be the starters next year with Bond's contract set to expire. I do think.
I will say that Young played very well in the playoffs, so he may be in for a bigger role next year.
I do think he'll get a bigger role, but, Moro Ojomo was the number 4 defensive lineman. Milton Williams, Jordan Davis, Jalen Carter were the top 3 defensive linemen. But when one of those guys was fatigued, Ojomo came in, and Young, even though he did play well, he was the number 5 guy in that lineup. He was the number 5 guy on the defensive line. The Eagles are probably going to make those two compete. They're probably going to make Ojomo and Young compete for the left end job in camp. They're not going to award it to either guy outright. They're going to make them compete for it. That's probably what they'll do. Yeah. Smith and Huff will probably start at edge rusher. Zach Bond's a UFA. I could see the Eagles bringing Bond back if it's a team-friendly deal. Nakobe Dean and Jeremiah Trotter Jr. are both on rookie deals if you don't bring Bond back. And as much as I want to extend Dean, he showed he couldn't stay healthy this year in the playoffs. We don't know what his status is going to be for next year, but Darius Slay might get traded or bought out. I love Slay, but Mitchell and DeJean showed they could be number 1 and number 2 corners when Slay was injured. Slay's making $13.7 million. Bradbury's making $5.1 million. CJ Gardner-Johnson, starting strong safeties, back for 2 more years. So is Reed Blankenship. He's back for 1 more year. You have Sidney Brown back for 2 more years on his rookie deal. Keely Ringo, 2 more years. So the secondary still going to be a strong point for the Eagles, but I think it's more about fine-tuning what are you going to do at inside linebacker if Zach Bond leaves? What are you going to do at edge rusher next to Nolan Smith, if Josh Sweat leaves? Those are the questions I think the Eagles are going to have to answer. I don't think they repeat, but they're in a much better position than you realize. They are kind of the Chiefs were at after they won Super Bowl 57. That's kind of where the Eagles are at right now. They're in a good spot, but at the same token, I do think they're going to have to reload. And, there were a lot of rumors the Eagles were going to move on from A.J. Brown. Winning this Super Bowl pretty much gives A.J. Brown another year in Philly. And A.J. Brown's contract runs through 2030. Devonta Smith's contract runs through 2029. And Smith's not making $20 million until 2028. So they're in a good spot where they don't have to move or offload the contract because of the situation they're in. But yeah, they've got a 1 or 2 year window to get a second one. I think the Eagles, as far as their window goes, they capitalized on their window. I think they could get back to an NFC title game against the Buccaneers. Maybe they get to Super Bowl 63 and lose to the AFC champion. But I don't think they repeat. I mean, I do think they get back to the playoffs. But I also think with their schedule next year, I feel like someone is going to beat them next year. I don't know who yet, but I don't know. It's just Eagles are not.
Now, I heard a rumor this morning that the 49ers may be willing to trade a number of levels and a couple of seconds for Myles Garrett. Now, if that happens, would that put the 49ers and the Eagles next?
I don't think they're going to trade for Garrett because they have a ton of contracts they got to pay. They got to pay Purdy $55 to $60 million. They got to cut all these other players, restructure all these contracts. I don't think the Niners can take on that contract. That's a great fit. I want to see Garrett. I want to see Myles Garrett get traded to a team that runs a 43 defense that can utilize his skill set to the maximum. I want to see a team like that trade for Garrett. I'd rather see Garrett on the 49ers run a 34 defense. I don't think he's a good fit for that defense. I think he's a better fit for a 43 defense like the Bengals, Chiefs, Bills, 49ers, Commanders. I think he's a better fit for that type of defense. I could see that, but I just don't know if the Niners have the cap space to pull that off. Because I'm looking at the Eagles' schedule for next year. They got to play the Bills on the road. They got to play the Packers on the road. They got to play the Chiefs on the road. Cowboys on the road with a healthy Dak Prescott. Chargers on the road. They could lose as many as 5 road games. I do think they beat the Vikings if Darnold's back. If McCarthy's back, I think the Vikings could upset them. The Giants, I think they beat the Giants. So we're looking at, they play the Buccaneers in Tampa. That's another team that could beat them. And they play the Commanders in Washington. So you're looking at as many as 6 to 8 losses next year if all the home teams are healthy. They host the Rams, host the Raiders, host the Broncos, host the Lions. I think you might even be looking at 9 losses. I think you're looking at 9-8 or 8-9, though, for the Eagles next year. I do, honestly. Looking at their schedule, it is brutal schedule because they got to play the Chiefs and the Bills on the road, the Packers on the road. They got to play the Commanders, Buccaneers on the road. That is just a brutal schedule. If they had gotten the Bills or the Chiefs at home, that'd be one thing, but they got both teams on the road. So,
Well, Chris, my question to you is, who, either in the draft or free agency, or via trade, that the Eagles pull off for one side of Super Bowl defense, perhaps don't make the playoffs?
I don't know who the Eagles are going to get. I could not give you a definitive answer to that. What is the Eagles cap space for 2025? They have 13.8 million. 13.8 million. So 13.8 million. Sporting News, 7 sensible Eagles offseason moves to create over 70 million in cap space. Sweat is a goner in free agency. Extend Zach Bond. This Sporting News basically posted a guide on how to save 70 million in cap space. Let Sweat walk. Extend Zach Bond up to 15 million. You have 13.8 million to spend. You restructure Barkley. That would only save you 1.3 million. That gets you up to 15.1 million. But then you pay Bond, you're at 100K. You cut Bradbury. That gets you to 4,800,000 post June 1st. You extend Goddard. That gets you to 400K. You cut Darius Slay post June 1st. That gets you back to 4.7 million. You trade Kenny Pickett. That gets you to you're only going to get like a seventh for Pickett. You gave up a third for Pickett. You're only going to get like a fifth to seventh for Pickett. And I don't know who's desperate enough to take on Pickett's contract. That's the other part of this. Because I think the Eagles are going to trade Pickett to an AFC team, but who is going to bite the bullet on that Pickett contract? I think the Colts, because the Colts and Eagles, they have history. Colts have poached coaches off the Eagles, and if you don't want to bring back Flacco and you want to back up to Anthony Richardson, Kenny Pickett might be the answer, because you'd have a fifth-year option on both Pickett and Richardson that you can exercise if you choose. And that would get you up to 7.4 million if you did all the things Sporting News recommends. That does not create 70 million in cap space, though. They lied about that like politicians to get you to read their article. But yeah. What do we got here? Is William on? Because I was gonna jump into the. Let me see if William texted me back. He was on at 10:49. Are you kidding me? Ugh, I'm such an idiot. All right, so William was on at 10:49, and I completely ignored him. I feel like a dick. I didn't see the text. I mean, I wasn't checking my phone. I was checking the free agency. That's me. That's my fault. I mean, I'm going to give William a second to rant about whatever he wants to rant about, because, it's 11:11. We do have an MLS season preview, but that is going to be at noon. We still have 49 minutes to kill. We literally have 49 minutes to kill. So I'm going to give William a floor. Next week, we are going to do something really fun. It's the battle of the draft simulators. NBA draft, NHL draft, NFL draft, a 2-round NBA mock, a 7-round NHL mock, and a 7-round NFL mock. And we're not going to be using the simulator we used last year. We're going to be using a different simulator, Future Considerations. They haven't updated their simulator since October, but here is the kicker. Once you get past the top 100 on their list, they go on alphabetical order. They basically pick players based on alphabetical order. And there is a gem in this year's NHL draft. There's a defenseman that's 6'3", 215, 20 goals, 15 assists. He's a high school player, but he's also a quarterback on his football team. So he's both a defenseman in hockey and a quarterback in football, which is a pretty unique combo. I'm not saying that guy's NHL ready, but that's a guy you can develop into a third-line defenseman, and you can get him in the 5th round. So that's what you got to try to find, because the player, it's hard to get a first-line player after the 1st or 2nd round in today's NHL. Few teams have been able to pull it off. The Minnesota Wild got Kirill Kaprizov in the 5th round, but those are exceptions. Those are not the norm in hockey. Those are the exceptions to the rule. But yeah, I don't know what teams I'm going to use for the battle of the draft simulators next week, but we want to have like a scorekeeper, because I think if we want to have me, Joey, and William competing in the simulator, but we want to have somebody else keeping like scores of the events. So yeah. And you know,
Yeah, it's interesting. And there's no guarantee I'm going to use the same simulator you guys do.
well, the only simulator.
It's probably going to happen. It's still going to happen. I'm just trying to throw out some drama.
Yeah, you can pick a different simulator than the ones we use for the NFL, but the problem is there's only one simulator for the NBA and the NHL. There's only one simulator for 2025. So, yeah, you're going to have.
Where's that my fault? Where's that my fault? These other simulators, these other leagues got to start catching up. I mean, they're growing. They can't have one. They're going to have like 4 or 5. I mean, if you're growing, don't give me this crap about we only got one simulator. Bitch, you make something happen.
Yes, I mean, somebody basically said they were trying to build an NFL draft simulator on Reddit, but they didn't know how to code, so they had ChatGPT do the work for them. And I'm not a big ChatGPT guy myself. I'd rather learn organically or learn naturally, but I did type in some ChatGPT for a draft simulator, and I actually got some code. I got some results. I got to work on the Combine page. I don't have time to build that right now, but we do actually have a rough draft of something we could implement as far as Python for a draft simulator. We got something. I don't know if it's going to work, but we at least have a rough draft of what ChatGPT drew up, and we just have to type the code in, not on the site, but on like a Word document or a text editor, and then find out if the code's compatible with the server. That's
just to create the code. And Python is a good coding sequence, but it's a little more complicated than what they usually use. So, I mean, it's something that has a lot of promise.
yeah.
It just may take a little more time to implement.
There might be 2 NBA draft simulators, but Draft Prospect Hockey, the site we used for the NHL draft simulator last year, has not updated for 2025 yet. So, I mean, there's Fanspo. I don't know if Fanspo has updated their mock draft simulator for 2025. I'm looking to see if they have or haven't. No, they have updated for 2025. So Fanspo, so there's 2 NBA draft simulators, Sportskeeda and Fanspo, which we used last year for NBA and NFL.
We're talking about NBA draft.
There's only one simulator for the NHL draft, but there's 2 for the NBA. There's only one simulator for the NHL, but there's 2 for the NBA, and there's like 5 or 6 for the NFL.
How do you think the upperclassmen in last year's draft been doing this year in the NBA?
I know Cooper Flagg, Dylan Harper, and Ace Bailey are all going to go top 3, and William's here. William is here. Okay, I figured. All right. Perfect.
What's happening, y'all?
What's going on, William?
Not much, man. How you doing?
We're doing good. We just finished recapping the Super Bowl and free agency. We're also talking about next week's show, the Battle of the Draft Simulators. That's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to be doing an NBA, NHL, and NFL mock draft in one show. And basically, I'm going to give you the Scouting 101 overview. And the NFL Draft Simulator will be at the end. We'll probably do the NBA Draft Simulator first because it's only 2 rounds. NFL and NHL are 7. So, yeah, probably going to do the NBA one first and just get that out of the way next week when we do this. But we will do the NFL one at the end. And whoever wins that competition, they can post an article, a rant, a mock draft, whatever they want to do. And the scoring format will be similar to Guts on Nickelodeon. That's what we've decided. But yeah, how have you been, William?
Oh, I've been all right, man. You know, a little bit
So even if your draft is terrible, you still get 100 points.
Oh, well, can't beat that, man. I mean,
Yeah.
how you guys doing after the Super Bowl? Was it everything you expected?
Hey, Chris, since William's here, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to get done what I need to get done. And I will be back in a bit.
Yep.
So don't think I'm bad at you, folks.
Yeah, because I'm guessing. Yeah. All right. That's Joseph Potter. He will be back in a bit. But yeah, I'm working on some stuff for the combine, setting up the combine web pages like the Excel sheets. Because what I got to do is I got to type in the weigh-ins for all the Senior Bowl players. I think I'm on Yaya Black. But yeah, I'm working on the combine and just letting William talk about whatever. So we talked about the Super Bowl. We've gone over the contracts for all 32 teams. What do you want to talk about, man?
Oh, I don't know. You know, I mean, the next best thing in football is what, the combine, and like you said,
I
you know,
didn't.
I mean,
I haven't even started I basically started the code earlier this week, and usually I have it up by now, but I did an MLB mock draft. I did that yesterday. I got all the contracts up, like every single contract in baseball for a team. We got that up. It took 6 weeks versus the 4 weeks last year, but I think the quality is much, much better because it's going to be much easier to keep track of pitchers with good ERAs, batters that hit 10 or more home runs, batters that steal 10 or more bases, and batters who bat 300 in terms of batting average. It's going to be much easier to keep track of all that now.
nice.
So
That's always good, man.
yeah.
You know? I mean,
And I
can't
think
even
once you
imagine what
take
it's
care
like.
of that part of the baseball stuff, it's a lot easier to follow the sport as a fan. Because if you don't cover those bases, it is a pain in the ass to follow everything, and it's incredibly boring sometimes.
Yeah, I can imagine. It's
You know, MLB's partnering with Pokemon Go. I didn't tell Joey this because if I did, he would have gone on a huge rant about it probably. But yeah, Pokemon Go and MLB are partnering. They're going to have Pokemon Go stands outside of all 30 MLB stadiums this year. They're going to have a Pokemon Go section in each stadium, which is just nuts.
yeah, that's crazy stuff, man. I didn't even know that they were still doing that game. You know,
I thought it was a joke at first, but no, they are legitimately partnering.
yeah, I remember like way back when, you know, people were like walking out in traffic and that kind of stuff. It was kind of disheartening.
Look, I loved playing Pokemon as a kid, but I'm just not a fan of mixing video games with sports. I am not a fan of that.
Okay, I definitely like that. You know,
I'm not going to say anything bad about Pokemon, but I just don't like mixing video games with sports. I just don't think it's good for either brand. Because if we do this, we're creating this Inception world where, okay, we could put Yu-Gi-Oh! In the NBA or the NHL. We could put Magic the Gathering in Major League Soccer. No, we're not opening that can of worms. And that's what you're doing by putting Pokemon Go in MLB stadiums. You are opening that can of worms, whether you like it or not, William.
yeah, and you know, I can just imagine it. I figured just, you know, having somebody in the seats would be good enough. You know, I figured that they would want to watch the game instead of you know, like go off and play some game or something. You know,
Are we gonna have Pokemon Go contests at the NBA All-Star break next year with this fad? I'm kidding. But yeah, the NBA All-Star break has gotten that bad. Like, the only All-Star game that I think is fun anymore is the MLB All-Star game. I do like the Four Nations tournament for the NHL. I mean, I've heard it's really good, but a lot of people want them to implement stuff from that into the All-Star games for hockey. But really, MLB All-Star game is really the only good All-Star game left.
yeah,
I would say the rest of the All-Star games blow.
yeah, for real. And I mean, just what the
3-on-3 is
did.
fun for hockey because it's like the best 3 players in each division, and there's like a mini tournament. I do like that aspect of it, but I wish they'd make it 4-on-4 or 5-on-5.
Right. Yeah. That would make it a little bit more interesting, anyhow. You know, I mean.
And there's the futures game and the MLB draft, which are all intertwined into the All-Star weekend for baseball. So I think that's good. But yeah, the other All-Star games just blow. I mean, there's a reason why the NFL no longer goes to Aloha Stadium. After the NFL stopped going to Aloha Stadium, that's when the Pro Bowl stopped being fun for me.
Yeah, for real. I'm still back in the day watching Sean Taylor lay the punter out. You know, I mean, that was just, yeah. I think that was probably one of the last Pro Bowls that I watched. After that, it was just kind of.
I think the last Pro Bowl I watched was the 2020 Pro Bowl, but that's because I just came back from the 2020 Senior Bowl. I was in the airport waiting for my flight from Mobile to Charlotte. Pro Bowl was on, and then once I got to Charlotte, I'm going from Charlotte to Pittsburgh. The news Kobe died. Kobe died as soon as I got to Charlotte. That's how I heard about that.
Yeah, that was definitely too bad.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, you know, I sat up all night working on Cam Ward, going over film and everything else, and getting ready to write my evaluation on that. That's definitely interesting, considering, you know, after the last few drafts, you know, and the quarterbacks that were in them compared to this draft. I mean, I just don't see anybody that, you know, really popping out yet, you know, and it's kind of one of those things. And you know, I have Cam Ward, you know, on my preseason grade. He was I had him in the last part of the first round, and I had Jalen Milroe in the same place, and Quinn Ewers in the top half of the second round. And I haven't, you know, seen anything to really adjust my, you know, evaluations on, you know. I mean,
yeah.
So yeah, that's all I've been doing. So other than that, you know, the great Super Bowl of 2025 that,
Yeah, the
you know,
Super Bowl set the bar really low for the other sports leagues. I mean, really, as long as your championship game is not a 4-0 sweep in the World Series or the Stanley Cup or the NBA Finals, you can't do worse than this year's Super Bowl. As long as it's not a sweep, I think it's mathematically impossible to do worse than this year's Super Bowl. Because if it's a 4-1 series and all the games are multi-goal games, or the team wins by 10 or more points, then yeah, it's not a competitive, it's not a fun series. But or if it's a sweep, yeah. Because I think next year's group is going to be the better QB group. But I mean, that would be a fun exercise to do. Let's just looking at the 2026 boards and comparing them to 2025 at each position. Yeah, we'll do that until noon, until Joe. Yeah, because at noon I am going to do a soccer show, but we'll look at 2025 versus 2026. We'll look at the big boards for the next draft cycle after this one. Because quarterback, I think next year's quarterback group is stronger than 2025. 2026 running back group, you have CJ Baxter and Jeremiah Love, but it's not like, you have Justice Haynes also, transfer from Alabama to Michigan next year. He could pop next year. Mekhi Hughes. I do think it's an interesting class, but I also don't think it's I'm also not crazy about. I think this year's running back draft is better than 26, even though there are some guys I like in the 26 group. I think right now 26 is better. 25 is better than 26 at running back.
Jay Knott's coming out next year too.
Yeah, Jay Knott's also going to be in next year's draft.
So
right now,
it'll definitely be interesting to compare them.
Yes, because looking at the 26 draft right now, you have Carnell Tate going back to Ohio State. You have Evan Stewart going back to Oregon. Those are the two that stand out for me right now, but it's very early. And I think 2027 is the best receiving class. Because right now there's like 8 receivers projected to go in the first round of 27. And Jeremiah Smith and Ryan Williams could both potentially end up in the top 5. So
yeah, for sure. And
I think Tate's probably Tate and Stewart could be round 1 guys. I know Zachariah Branch has the highest grade, a 90.3 on NFL Draft Buzz, but we did not see him pop, William. We did not see, even though Branch has shown flashes of being dominant, we really didn't see him pop at USC this year with Miller Moss. Now, if he pops next year, that'll probably change my evaluation of him. He's projected to run a 4.35. But I also feel like the route tree needs to be refined. And Dane Key, Barry and Brown, are they coming back? I know John Michael Sturdivant's coming back to Kentucky or UCLA, John Michael Sturdivant. So I think I would give 2025 the edge at receiver because, I mean, I don't think there's a receiver as good as Burden or McMillan in 2026 unless you love Carnell Tate. And, Carnell Tate sort of lost that traction he had to Jeremiah Smith this year. So I would give 25 the edge receiver, but I'm not excited about either class. I think we're going to be in for a bear market at wide receiver the next 2 draft cycles, William. I do. I think the next 2 drafts is going to be a bear market for wide receivers. And teams are going to have to overpay for good receivers in free agency.
Yeah. There's always a few that'll come out of nowhere.
I think 27 is going to be I don't think we're getting a good receiver draft till 2027. Right now, 2026, Oscar Delp and Luke Haas, the Arkansas tight end, are my 2 favorites. You've got Jack Veiling of Michigan State, Eli Stowers at Vanderbilt. You've got a few guys, but I would give this draft the edge at tight end. This is a much better tight end draft than 26. So right now, QB, right now, running back, wide receiver, and tight end all go to 2025. Now, 2026 is where things get interesting because right now, Francis Malgoia, the Miami U right tackle, is probably going to move over to left tackle. Caden Proctor, Alabama left tackle. Spencer Fano, Utah left tackles in next year's draft. The Texas A&M left tackle is in next year's draft. The Texas A&M Trey Zune, he's in next year's draft. Honestly, next year's draft might be a better tackle draft. But I think it's hard to say because Parker Brailsford and Connor Tollison, I think they would both go ahead of every center in this draft if they were eligible. But that's right now, does not look like that's the case. Blake Miller's coming back to Clemson. Jaden Roberts is coming back to Alabama. Jake Slaughter's coming back to Florida. Logan Jones is coming back to Iowa. Bryce Foster's coming back to Kansas. Pat Coogan's coming back to Notre Dame. Okay, I've seen enough to where I think next year's center draft with Bryce Foster, Logan Jones, Pat Coogan, Notre Dame, Jake Slaughter, Florida, Parker Brailsford, Alabama. Next year's center draft is going to blow this year's center draft out of the water, William. Let's just be real.
Yeah, for sure. Just those names you mentioned. I mean, those are pretty much household names.
I think next year's going to be a really good center draft. 2026, it's hard to say. If you're high on Will Campbell and Kelvin Banks, then get a tackle this year. If you're not, wait for next year. But right now, Francis Malgoa, Rodney Kearney, the Florida left tackle, is he a left tackle or right tackle? But he's ranked number 3 on He's ranked number 3 on Pro NFL Draft Buzz right now. Roderick Kearney, the Florida offensive tackle. So that's kind of what I'm looking at. Roderick Kearney is the Kearney didn't even start at the beginning of the year. Austin Barber started at left tackle for Florida at the beginning of the year. And Kearney, I'm trying to find Kearney on the depth chart here. Yeah, I don't see Kearney on the I don't even see him listed here. But yeah, Roderick Kearney. Did Florida get him in the portal? Because I don't even see him on the I'm looking at him to see a little, because he has Roderick Kearney. He's played, yeah, so he's a 5-star recruit, but this is not updated. Roderick Kearney, this has him listed as a guard, so I don't really know what's going to happen with Kearney. But Elijah Badger is another receiver in next year's draft that I like. But yeah, I would give the tackle edge to because right now this draft has as many as 4 tackles that could be 4 linemen that could be Pro Bowlers in Kearney, Proctor, Malgoia, and then you have Spencer Fano. So I would give tackle and center the edge for 2026, making it a 3. So QB, tackle, center are going to be 2026. Tight end, running back, receiver 2025. Guard, I'm going to give 2025 to. I think that's fair, William. 2025 gets the win at guard, but tackle and center go for 2026.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense with everything that I've seen.
So it's 4. Right now, it's hard to say what happens at defensive end. TJ Parker and Keldrick Falk, Ruben Bain. But I've seen Parker mocked in a lot of mock drafts in the top 5 of a lot of 26 mock drafts. I've also seen Falk mocked because they're both edge rushers. I've seen both of those guys listed very highly in the mock drafts right now. But yeah, this next year's edge rusher draft, you have Adwa Bore's younger brother, the Northwestern Adwa Bore's younger brother's at Oklahoma. You have him. You have LT Overton, Solomon Tuipulotu, the younger brother of Tuipulotu, who's at USC. Mikhail Kamara came back to Indiana. Peter Woods, Clemson. I think next year's defensive end group, I would give this defensive end group the edge, but next year's defensive end group could be better. It's really too early to say. Ruben Bain's going to be back. I'm going to give 2025 the edge at defensive end, but, it's really too early to say. 2026 could end up being a better defensive tackle group. Kelby Collins is in 2020. Traore's in 2026. So 2026 looks really encouraging right now, to where I don't think you can trash on 2026's defensive end group. I think it's slightly weaker than this group, but it's still I would say defensive end is the deepest position for 2026 so far. And it's the 3rd deepest position in 2025. So that just tells me there's going to be more talent coming in. Daryl Jackson Jr., Florida State, Hobbs, Corleone. I don't see a defensive tackle outside of Corleone that I love right now. Bear Alexander, maybe. Zane Durant. I think you're looking at those 3 as the guys that have a shot to get into round 1. Defensive tackle is much weaker in 2026 compared to 25. But Corleone's probably going to be that one headliner or that one first-round defensive tackle.
Yeah.
So...
yeah, him coming into next year is going to show a little bit, and like you said, this year I feel that this is definitely a pretty strong, defensive end class, between, Mike Green's gonna, he already showed out at the Senior Bowl, coming out of Marshall, and there's a few others, so.
I thought Princely Umanian came back. I thought Princely Umanian declared for the draft, but Prince Will Umanian, is that the Ole Miss player? Because it says he's on Nebraska. I don't know what's happening, and they've got But yeah, linebacker, next year at linebacker, you're going to have Deontay Lawson, you're going to have Anthony Hill Jr., and you're going to have Harold Perkins. So honestly, I was not high on the linebacker group this year. So I will give 2026 the advantage at linebacker, but I think it's top heavy. I don't think it's deep. I think it's top heavy. So that's what I'll say about that. Cornerback definitely goes to 2025. So 2025 wins at defensive end and defensive tackle and defensive end, making it 6'3", and then outside linebacker, middle linebacker at 6'5". I'm gonna give corner to 2025. I mean, with the corners we have in next year's draft, I'm going to give 2025 the cornerback advantage because Hunter, Will Johnson, Benjamin Morrison. I think 2025 is just a better cornerback group right now. 2026, you have Caleb Downs. He could go high. I think he's going to go higher than either Starks or the Notre Dame safety, Xavier Watts. But after him, you have Isaac Smith. You have Omigoso, Kamari Ramsey. It's not an exciting group after but it's still very early in the process. There's still time for these guys to turn things around, William. But just looking at 2026, I think defensive end and quarterback are the two deepest positions. And then it's just kind of a meh draft outside of the first two rounds. That's kind of my early impression of 2026. It's not a draft that's 3-4 rounds deep at certain positions right now. That'll change in due time. But right now, Tacario Davis is in 2026. He went back. He entered the portal. So, Tacario Davis could end up being the number one cornerback in next year's draft. Because I think next year's group, it's wide open right now. So I would not be surprised if Tacario Davis ended up as the number one corner. I think Jair Hill, Michigan, and Dalen Everett, Georgia, Damani Jackson, Alabama. I think that's what you're looking at with 2026. Rod Moore, Michigan. There are some players I like, but I'm not crazy about the 26 draft. I think defensive end and quarterback are the deepest positions in 2026, and it feels like it's top heavy at a few positions, but the only positions where it looks like it could be 3 or 4 rounds deep right now for 26 is defensive end and quarterback, which is great because those are the two most important positions on both sides of the ball. But it also means there's a finite supply of talent available at other positions when guys retire or teams move on from other guys, which hurts the NFL too.
Yep, for real. But yeah, dude.
What do you think about that? So outside of defensive end and maybe quarterback, do you see a position that might be 3 or 4 rounds deep in 26? Because I don't see it right now. Maybe tackle, but I think it's a 1-2 round tackle draft, and then there's a drop off in round 3.
Yeah, and this year we've already talked about the running backs and the tight ends. I don't see those really outdoing those. This is kind of a rare class where got some tight ends that are really good, and 3 or 4 definitely deserve to have a first round grade. So besides that, like you said, man,
you got guys like Gadsden, Mason Taylor, Luke Lakey, Arroyo from the Senior Bowl. It's just this year's tight end group
Arroyo
is good, and 2026's tight end group is it's not bad, but it's not something I'm excited about. You got Oscar Delp and some other guys, and it's kind of meh right now. And 26, I like Carnell Tate. I like Florida's wide receiver. I do. I like Florida's wide receiver. Florida's got a really good receiver coming back. So I'm not going to say anything bad about it, but outside of Elijah Badger, Carnell Tate, and some of these other guys coming back, I'm not really excited about the 26 group right now. I think 27 is going to be the best receiver group. And I think a lot of teams, they're gonna go all in, or they're gonna go after a lot of 1-2 year contracts with free agent receivers the next few years. and then we'll see teams reload at receiver again in 27. Because right now you can make an argument that both Jeremiah Smith and Ryan Williams end up in the top 5. And you could also argue that there's as many as 8 first-round receivers in the 27 group. So that's why I'm kind of just right now. I'm kind of waiting to see what happens with that. Because right now, outside of Elijah Badger, Evan Stewart, and Carnell Tate, there's not a receiver I'm excited about for 26. And those receivers, I'm not as excited about those guys as I was Luther Burden or McMillan.
Yeah. You know,
Doesn't mean it's going to be a bad class, William, but, I'm just not as excited about that group right now.
Yeah, for sure. And, it's still way early to even tell. So, but yeah, other than that, I mean, there's always, a ton of defensive backs that are going to be picked, and, that's become, such a staple these days. Teams have started to build, from coverage and wide receivers and such, instead of from the inside out, from where the play starts, with the defensive line and offensive line, and but other than that, I mean, I just can't wait till we get onto this draft. I mean, it seems like it's been so long in the making, or
Yeah,
least,
because the live stream for the draft, I'm probably just going to code the picks on the site and do some draft grades, but I'm not going to get super in depth with it because I know Oren's already reached out to Emmanuel, reached out to Sean and said, come on to the draft live stream. So if that's the case, it'd be me, Oren, Sean, Emmanuel. We add you, we had Joey, we have at least 6 people on. And at that point, I just don't think I'm needed unless people want to see the visuals of my picks, my grades. I don't think I'm needed if we have 5 other people on breaking down pick by pick besides myself and Joey, because we really only, if we have 5 people breaking down picks, it's like 2 minutes. We each get a minute, maybe 2 minutes to break down each pick in the first round if we have that many people on. So,
yeah, for real. That'd definitely be interesting, having that.
We had that many people on in 2018, but it was chaos.
Yeah.
It was chaos because I had a 5th round grade on Terrell Edmonds. The Steelers took him in the first round. I think I gave the Steelers an F grade for that. I like Tremaine Edmonds. I did not think his brother Terrell Edmonds deserved to go in round 1. I thought there were better safeties. Derwin James and Deshaun Elliott were my number 1 and number 2 safeties in that draft. And the Steelers ended up replacing Edmonds with Elliott. So that's ironic. The Steelers are basically admitting I was correct about that. Even if they refuse to acknowledge me, they're basically admitting that I was correct about that.
Right. Well, you're pretty much right about everything, Chris. I'm serious about that.
Yeah, but next week we'll have NBA, NHL, and NFL draft simulators up on the live stream. Joey, William, and I will be picking for a team. I don't know how we'll be keeping track of the scoring, but I have asked if anybody wants to come on as a guest as like a scorekeeper if all 3 of us do the simulator next week. All 3 of the simulators. We'll see. I'm waiting to see okay. All right. What else can we discuss here? Because I know Joey's got some stuff to handle. I'm going to get into the soccer preview at noon, but what else do you want to talk about until then? Because we still got some time.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know, man. I mean, just getting over the football season, and everything it has been interesting. It came to such a close so quick, and I guess it's just one of those years. You know, I mean, I don't know, man. You know, I mean,
The Colts are expected to show interest in Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers, Anthony Richardson, that is going to be a storm of epic proportions. That is going to be,
man. For real. You know, Aaron Rodgers, there's been everybody, you know, between saying, you know, making the comparisons, you know, Brett Favre and everything else, you know, so hoping he lands with the Vikings. But actually, the Colts, that's not too bad of an idea, you know. And I mean, Flacco, I mean, he, every time he was in starting this year, you know, I mean, Josh Downs had a great day, you know, great game. Every time that he was starting it, as opposed to Richardson, and I think the Colts have to decide what to do with Richardson, you know, or they can't just, you know, hit and putter, you know, and kind of, they've got to go all in one way or the other with him. And you know, Aaron Rodgers, even though, you know, he's probably the most selfish football player there is, most selfish quarterback there is, you know, that might actually be something for uh, Anthony Richardson to learn from, you know, and get a chance to develop, you know, because Rodgers only has, you know, he's only going to play.
There's only 4 teams that can be forced onto Hard Knocks for HBO. Atlanta Falcons, Carolina Panthers, Seattle Seahawks, Tennessee Titans. Tennessee, if you do not want to be on Hard Knocks, pass on a quarterback at 1. That is the easiest way to get out of Hard Knocks. Because I guarantee you, if they do not pick a quarterback, HBO is basically just going to toss the Titans to the curb and say, we're not going to Tennessee this year.
Well, you know, the Titans, I don't think they have much of a choice unless they get, you know, a booty haul of
unless they draft Shadur or Ward at 1, I don't think the Titans are going to be the team that's on Hard Knocks of those 4. I think they're the least likely to be picked. Seattle is a fun team, but I don't think they're going to pick Seattle either. I think it's going to be Atlanta or Carolina. I'm leaning Carolina. Atlanta would be fun, but they're getting the Super Bowl in a few years, so I'm leaning Carolina for Hard Knocks.
Yeah. You can kind of see if they do pick the Falcons where they're coming from, because, you know, Penix will be coming in for the.
I think it's going to be Atlanta or Carolina. I really can't see them picking anybody else. The Patriots were in this discussion initially, but you have to have a multiple year head coach. If they had kept Gerard Mayo, Patriots would be the front runner for Hard Knocks. But because they fired Mayo, they avoid that drama until 2026.
Yeah, and I'm wondering how that's going to work out with what's his name, Vrabel up there in up in New England. You know, I mean, has he hired a OC yet?
Yes, he did hire an OC. Josh McDaniels is back as the OC. They hired the Lions defensive line coach as their defensive coordinator. So they made a lot of smart moves as far as okay, we have something in the chat room here. What do we have here? I think tackle is deep. Is that for 2025 or 2026? They said I think tackles is deep. They didn't specify whether it's offensive tackles or defensive tackles, but that's what we got in the chat room. I think tackles is deep. I appreciate the comment. I wish you would elaborate on that, but whether you think offensive tackle or defensive tackle is deep. But if you think both tackle positions are deep this year, that's great too.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, Vrabel coming in, that's something to solidify, you know, what they've had after, you know, what they had happen with Mayo, and they had a rift, you know, similar to similar to what was going on in Las Vegas. To where
Yeah,
you got,
I honestly, the Eagles might only win 8 or 9 games next year. I pulled up their schedule earlier. It's brutal, William. At Bills, at Cowboys if Dak's healthy, at Packers, at Chiefs. It's a brutal schedule. They get at Vikings. They get if it depends if Darnold or McCarthy plays. They might beat the Vikings in Minnesota, but they get the Vikings on the road. They get the Chiefs on the road. They get Bills, Cowboys, Packers, Chiefs on the road, Chargers on the road. They get the Vikings and Giants at home, which are their most winnable road games. They get the Buccaneers on the road in Tampa. They get the Commanders on the road in Washington. Oh, and they get the Lions at home too. So they might lose 8 or 9 games just based on that schedule alone, as good as they are. That is just a brutal schedule for the Eagles next year.
yeah, just the way you started out, that's a good way to that's a good way to lose some games, man. And not that they don't have talent up there, in Philly, but they're definitely gonna have to be doing a few brotherly shoves or tush push or whatever the hell you call that thing, and that's going to be interesting. But
The
we know that
Bill,
the defense
I
is
do think the
talented.
Bengals are going to win the Super Bowl, but they may have to go to Buffalo to beat the Bills and then go to Kansas City to beat the 2-seed Chiefs. But the Bills, this might be their best crack at the 1 seed. They get the Eagles at home, they get the Chiefs at home, they get the Bengals at home, and they get the Ravens at home. Their 3 toughest road opponents are at Texans, at Browns, at Steelers. Right now, those are the Bills' 3 toughest opponents on the road. That is very
Yeah,
favorable for Buffalo entering their
very
final
much,
year at
man.
Highmark. As long as they win those home games in the regular season, we could be looking at Highmark Stadium and the Bills being the 1 seed. But then if they lost to Burrow as it was a 4 seed or a 6 seed, that would just be such a heartbreaking way to lose. And then they'd move into new Highmark and then they'd get the Super Bowl that year. But yeah, I honestly, the Bills, their schedule is very favorable in that respect next year, to where you get the Chiefs, Ravens, Bengals, and the Eagles all at home. You're not getting that hand dealt to you again. You are not getting that hand dealt to you again. So,
Yeah, just last year, I mean,
and then the
they
thing is,
definitely.
if they manage to screw that up, Josh Allen's going to come in and play with so much fire, so much intensity, so much rage that he actually gets them over the hump. If they can't get over the hump next year with that schedule, he's going to get them over the hump in 2026 when the new stadium opens, because he's going to be pissed off at that point, to where they're just going to go out and do it if they
Yeah,
can't do it next year with the schedule they have for the regular season.
and McDermott and Bean better be getting him some more skill position players. I mean, Took wants a hell of a lot of money for I mean, dude can play, but he hasn't. I'm not sure if he showed what he's asking for in that contract. And they just moved on from Diggs. And they have to decide what they have in Keon Coleman
And they don't have a lot of cap
Khalil
space
Shakir.
either for this year. They'll have some money for 26, but right now they don't have a lot of cap space. Oh, they're kind
Yeah,
of in a sticky. They're kind of in a tough spot. I don't want to say they're in a sticky spot, but they're kind of in a tough spot as far as what they want to do.
yeah. They have to really decide what they have going forward too. And I mean,
Ravens don't have a lot of cap space either. Chris Jones, if Chris Jones restructures, the Chiefs save $20 million. If Travis Kelce retires, that bumps them up to $46 million. And at that point, they can buy out Ravens left tackle Ronnie Stanley, the top left tackle in the market in free agency at that point. So if Kelce retires and Chris Jones restructures. So that's what I'm paying attention to, because I think right now the Chiefs and Bengals have the 2 best windows with because the Bengals right now have around 24 to 45 million. I think the Chiefs and Bengals have the 2 best windows for next year as far as the cap space goes. The Bengals and the Ravens and Bills don't have a lot of cap space. So they pretty much have to rely on their drafting A team like the Bengals, even if they underperform in the regular season due to a tough schedule, they can get hot in the playoffs. And if they get in, they're going to be a tough out for whoever.
Yeah, for sure. I see, Josh Allen, it's time for him to either, do something or, show that he is an elite quarterback or, show that he's not. And it's one of those things like where I was talking about before, the Colts and what they had with Peyton Manning, they didn't really, have that. They had exactly what's going on with the Bills now, and their stats, show that. And like I said, they have to survive whatever they have this year, and if it's
Texans are in the same spot as the Ravens and Bills. Not
it.
a lot of cap space to play with. And they don't really have the established QB. That's the other thing. So, I mean, the Texans, they do have Stroud, but, these teams that have good QB, how many teams have good QBs and a lot of cap space to work with? You have the Chiefs, the Texans, maybe the Chargers, but they haven't won a playoff game yet with that core. And that's really it. Maybe you can throw the Broncos and Bo Nix in that conversation, but the Broncos only have $20 million. They don't have a lot to spend. They have more to spend than the Bills, Ravens, and the Texans, but they don't have a lot to spend. The Jaguars have about $30 million, but they've paid a lot of their core guys. They didn't get Ben Johnson because they kept Trent Baalke, and that ended up costing them. So,
yeah. And that's kind of a questionable
Patriots could be a playoff team down the road, but I don't think, even with a perfect offseason, I think they're a 7 to 11 win team at best, and I'm leaning more towards a 7 to 9 win mark than the 11 win mark.
Yeah.
Because they just have too many needs. Left tackle, another edge rusher next to Jennings, another corner next to Gonzalez. They just have too many needs to where I can't see them pulling a 180 in one off season, even with all the cap money they have. They're positioned well to where if they don't F this up, it could be their division by 2030. It really could. They just have to get the right players in the first round of the draft and pay Drake May when his rookie deal is up. And if they do that and they don't mess it up, they could be positioned as the number 2 team behind the Bills by 27 or 28, and then maybe the number 1 team by 2030. That's basically what your game plan's got to be if you're the Patriots right now.
Yeah.
And you got to be patient with it, Kraft, because right now it's just
kind of like what's going on with the Texans. You mentioned that they have, not a whole lot of cap space, and it's like, but they're also what the third year,
Stroud's in the third year of the rookie deal, but him, Al, and Lamar Jackson only 5 to 12 million cap space right now. So I don't think they can win. I don't think any of those teams can win a Super Bowl with that little cap space. They can get back to the playoffs, maybe get to an AFC title game, but I think it's the Chiefs and the Bengals. That's really for next year. I think we're looking at the Chiefs and the Bengals because the Bengals have 2 good tackles. They hired a coach who's great on the interior offensive line to be their new O-line coach. And they've got the Notre Dame defensive coordinator. I think he's going to surprise a lot of people in the NFL. So I really do think it's a 2-team race between the Chiefs and Bengals in the AFC for next year. NFC is a little bit more wide open. You've got the Eagles, $13.8 million. You've got the Commanders, $97 million. You've got the Lions. They're at the point where they got to start paying guys on rookie deals. You've got the Packers. What are they going to do? Can they close the gap? I think the Bears could be a dark horse to get a wild card next year, but I don't think they're going to win a playoff game in Ben Johnson's first year. But I do think they're a dark horse to get a wild card next year.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting because they have a whole lot of talent on that team, and seeing if Ben Johnson can show out early, like so many young coaches haven't.
Yeah.
But
and for everybody wondering why haven't I gone live with the MLS live stream, I do plan on going live with that, but I'm also going to wait until Joey gets back from whatever he's doing. So, or until William and I run out of fun NFL topics to discuss. But it's like,
fun
The NFL talk is fun.
topics.
It's more popular than the MLS talk, and even though MLS previews are fun, I don't want to dive into those until Joey gets back. And I know he's got some stuff to do, so we'll just keep talking about NFL until he gets back.
You know, and oh yeah, Debo Samuel wants to trade. That's
all right.
I'm not sure how that's exactly going to work out, you know, with his cap number being what 31 million or something along those lines. That's definitely interesting, you know, unless somebody wants to use him for, you know, I mean, they have to decide if he's going to be a true number one on their team, which, you know, I see him as more of a gadget player, you know, and he didn't show out this year, so I don't even know if he's going to get, you know, traded or, you know, if he's going to end up on the chopping block, you know, as whatever, you know. So, but that's one thing that the 49ers, they're definitely in flux, you know, because they've got to pay Brock Purdy, you know, they've got to make sure that they have some skill position players, you know, Ricky Pearsall, he's a slot receiver, you know, and I mean, you got Brandon.
I'm not sure what to think of this meme. I honestly think it's disrespectful to Star Wars. Yoda with white skin looks like Jerry Jones. That's disrespectful to Yoda because Jerry Jones is not, even though Jerry Jones does have a lot of business savvy, he does not have the sage wisdom Yoda has when it comes to operating a football team. So I think it's insulting to compare Jerry Jones to Yoda. I think that's insulting to Yoda more so than insulting to Jerry Jones. I feel like that's more insulting towards Yoda.
Definitely. I saw that meme somewhere too, and yeah, that cracks me up. But yeah, dude, freaking. Speaking of the Cowboys, they were talking about maybe trading Micah Parsons or had internal. Is that how I heard it?
Yeah,
Had
I mean,
internal conversations about it. And I mean, what are they after with that?
I don't know.
I mean,
I'll pull up the
Jerry
because
Jones.
the Cowboys don't have a lot of cap space. The Cowboys have negative $2 million according to Over the Cap. The Chiefs have negative 916,000, but Chris Jones is restructuring, which is going to save about 20 million. The Bears have 62 million. The Lions have 45 million. The Packers have 42 million. So I think the NFC is going to be kind of a crapshoot with Commanders, Packers, Lions, Bears being the big spenders. Eagles still have a respectable 18 million, but apparently someone said they only had 13.8 million. But either way, I still think the Eagles are. I don't know if the Eagles are a playoff team. I mean, they've got the talent to be a playoff team, but their schedule is brutal next year. That's why it's just. But yeah, you've got because the Chiefs and Bengals, Chiefs cap situation, they can clear that up. The Texans are 99,000 over the cap. The Ravens only have 5.9. The Bills are also over the cap. The Bills are 14 million over the cap right now for 2020. I didn't realize they were that much over the cap. Broncos have 34.7 million. That's workable, but I don't know if it's enough to separate them. The Chargers have 63 million. So I think the Chiefs, the Bengals, and the Chargers are going to be the three big players in the AFC moving forward. And I think the Bills, they got to figure out what they want to do. The Ravens got to figure out what they want to do as far as cap space goes. Commanders, 75 million. Really the only team with a good QB and a lot of cap space. Bears, Vikings, 58 million. Basically, every NFC North team has 42 million to spend because they've done such a good job in the draft that every NFC North team's got 42 million to spend on players. That's nuts, though.
Yeah.
Rams have 38 million, but they might trade Stafford and Kupp. Jaguars have 32 million. Colts have 28 million. See, the NFC feels more wide open than the AFC, whereas the AFC, you've got the Bengals and you've got the Chiefs, and if Kelsey retires and Chris Jones restructures, that creates 44 to 46 million cap space. So even if the Chiefs are a 916,000 over the cap right now, it doesn't matter. If those two things happen, they go from they go to like 43, 46 million. And that's enough to get them a Ronnie Stanley because they've got 77 million for 2026. And you'd be paying 20 to 25 million for 2 or 3 years. And the other teams really aren't positioned well in the AFC. Chargers are the next best team outside the Chiefs and Bengals as far as cap space and having the franchise QB, but they got a lot of work to do. They haven't won a playoff game with Herbert yet. The Ravens have a very limited amount of cap space. The Bills are over the cap. The Texans are over the cap. So you see where this is problematic. The Jets only have 16 million, and if Aaron Rodgers gets cut, they are going to take a cap hit and go over the cap. You see where this gets problematic, William? I mean, it's just...
Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure, man. You know, that's...
I know the Steelers have 53 million, but they are going to pour some money into Watt. They're probably going to pay Rodgers, or they're going to pay Stafford. They're going to pay somebody. I don't know who they'll pay, but they're going to pay somebody. All right.
Yeah. And that was, you know, and then they're talking about trading Stafford for the number 3 overall pick. And it's like, dude, you know, a 1 or 2 year rental, that's not even close to, you know, what's fair for that, you know? I mean, I see them, you know, being able to trade him to a team, you know, with a young quarterback or, you know, somebody that's wanting to build, you know, and to actually, you know, in the name of development, like hasn't been, you know, so much the last few years, but, you know. Oh. Ow.
Cardinals have 71 million. They're another team that could be worth keeping an eye on, but I just don't trust Kyler Murray. That's why I didn't really bring them up.
Yeah. Kyler Murray. That's why I drafted Quinn.
That's why you mocked Quinn Ewers.
I had to.
I don't blame you.
Had to. It's just, you know, that Call of Duty and Kyler Murray just, you know, yeah. Anyway.
I agree. Kyler Murray. They need to do a they need to do a Call of Duty commercial for the new game with Kyler Murray in it. And they need to film it in the summer and then just leak it like week before Call of Duty comes out. And you have Kyler Murray in it.
Yeah, for sure, man. I need to get his handle on there so I can go on Call of Duty and, you know, talk some shit.
Okay,
Yeah.
Joey's back. Before we jump into the MLS preview, you want to talk about anything NFL related with William? Because I've just gone over the cap space, gone over the figures. Really, the Chiefs and the Bengals are the two teams in the AFC that are positioned the best. They got the QB. They've got the ability to create more cap space. The Chiefs can get up to 43, 44, 45 million. Bengals have 46 million to spend. The Chargers have 63 million, but the Bills are over the cap. The Ravens have 5.9 million. The Texans are over the cap. The Eagles only have 13 to 18 million. The Commanders have 75 million. Vikings 58. Lions 45. 49ers 44. Packers 42. Rams 38. I mean, that's right now. It just feels like you've got the Commanders, you've got the NFC North, you've got the 49ers and the Rams who can make things interesting. And then you got everybody else in the NFC. And then the AFC just feels like a two-team race between the Bengals and Chiefs right now with the cap opportunities, the cap space the Chiefs can create, and the current cap situation the Bengals are in. Because the Bills, the Ravens, the Texans, they're not going to have the money to be big spenders in free agency, Joey. They're going to either have to cut some guys to create more cap space or rely on their drafting.
There's only two things I've heard. One, I'm sure all of you have heard with Deion Sanders, and that doesn't need to be going into it yet right now. And the other thing I heard was just some really freaking stupid, which just got under my skin, which I want to address real quick. And that's somebody on chat sports. I browse chat sports a bit, hear rumors and such. And they said, somebody asked, I think it was an Eagles fan, said, would they be interested in trading for Jeremiah Owusu or Cormora if the Browns do a total revamp? And I'm just sitting here thinking, nobody's trading for him. From all speculation, he's got nerve damage in his neck. He may never play again. Who the hell is trading for somebody who may never play the game again? What the hell are you guys thinking?
That is even dumber than MLB's partnership with Pokemon Go. Yeah, there's a partnership with Pokemon Go. They're gonna partner with them. They're gonna put Pokemon Go things in all 30 MLB stadiums. That's gonna happen this year, apparently.
It's not about whether he's a good enough player or not. It's about, dude, a neck injury. Nerves to the neck. Okay, I don't know if anybody has ever really thought about nerve injuries. They regenerate on their own time. It doesn't matter. And for an injury that the Browns have and JOK have both been very silent on, so we don't even know the severity of it. Only that it's a possible nerve injury in the neck or shoulders, which is devastating. Who the hell's going to trade for that? Guys, just calm yourselves, okay? Just because my spirit says he wants to trade doesn't mean they're going to try to trade everybody, including the guy that may never play again, and your team is not going to trade for a guy that may never play again. I'm sorry. I am so sorry. They're not going to try to trade for a guy that may never play again. Okay? So, just calm yourself down and think realistically here. I'm glad you're optimistic about your team and you want them to improve. But for the love of crap, don't get stupid on us. Okay? That's all I got to say about it.
Yeah, I agree. What else? I feel like we've covered everything, William. Is there anything else we need to cover on Draft Utopia today? I mean, what do you think?
I guess not, man. Got on and we got pretty much caught up with everything and headed into the draft and everything else. And
I mean, while Joey was gone, we were looking at the 26th draft, comparing the positions. Right now, defensive end and quarterback are the only positions that I think are 3 rounds deep in the 26th draft. Those are the only 2 positions that I think there's 3 rounds of good talent in. Everything else, it feels like 26 might be worse than this year, but it is quality in a lot of positions in 25. Running back, tight end. I like the tackle group. I know Joey does too. Guard position's really good. Center, next year's center group is good. I probably put center as the 3rd best position behind defensive end and quarterback for 2026 right now, because William and I, we were talking about the center group for next year. It's a really good center group for 2026. So that could cause the centers in 2025. That might be why Jonah Monheim's still the number 1 center with a 3rd round grade in 2025 with the group next year's center group. It just looks really good on paper.
Next year's center group is a really good group. Something I've been thinking of is like, you have guys from 2025 and 2024 that are really good. You have guys from 2023 that are really good. But I started thinking 2025 is really good. 2026 maybe even better. So, who is the odd man out? I mean, is Luke Whippler a guy that everybody had high hopes for is going to be out? Who is the odd man out? Because you know there's going to be at least one guy who's supposed to be getting trained.
Yeah, but there's like 5 or 6 good centers. You've got Parker Brailsford, you've got Jake Slaughter out of Florida, you've got the Penn State. I think Texas A&M's got a center. Bryce Rain. Texas A&M's got a center in the draft. Penn State, I think, might have a center. Notre Dame's got a center in 2026. 2026, Iowa's got a center in 2026. That William liked at the beginning of the year. So 2026 is already the draft. I've sort of penciled in and said that's the center draft. Whereas this is the guard draft.
I just think that there's going to be one of these guys that we thought would be a developmental starter who's probably going to be started in 2025 that's going to be on the out because of how good the 2026 draft is.
Outside of Jonah Monheim and Jarrett Wilson out of Georgia, is there anybody else in this class that can become a starter outside of those two? I don't think so. I would say the answer to that's a resounding no with Parker Brailsford going back.
I think as far as pure centers go and not somebody who can play guard, I think you might have just those 2 guys.
Yeah, that's it.
So it's like you're looking at Whippler last year, I think it was, and you're looking at these 2 guys this year, and then what is next year? I think somebody in this group of the last 2 years is going to be displaced by those guys next year. Question is, who's it going to be? And that is still confirmed because, you know, it hasn't happened yet in some teams. So, we're going to have to see about that. But I think somebody's going to be displaced.
Yeah, because I like the defensive end group. The defensive end group for 2026 is pretty deep. I don't know if it's as deep as this year's group, but it's pretty deep for next year. It's deep at quarterback. Quarterback value in next year's group's really good. You got.
I don't think the defensive end group is deep this year, but I think the defensive tackle group is much deeper this year than next year.
The defensive tackle group is not going to be as good next year. Defensive tackle group is going to be deeper, but yeah, Parker Brailsford and Connor Tollison out of Missouri, who ran a 4.98, are the top 2 centers for 2026. Brailsford out of Alabama, Tollison for Missouri. I think both of those guys would be the top 2 centers in this draft. And then you've got Jake Slaughter, Florida, Logan Jones, Iowa.
I've always said that's misleading because, let's face it, when is a center going to have to run 40 yards downfield?
It is misleading, but can I list off the centers before you ran about this? Because you got Jake Slaughter, Logan Jones, Bryce Foster, Kansas, Pat Coogan, Notre Dame. Those are the top 6 centers for next year. You see why next year's group is much better than this one?
I'm a huge fan of Foster, you know, so I understand that, but it's always been for me that when it comes to 40. Look at the 10 yards for the offensive line, because when is the next time you're going to see an offensive line? We need a coach say, yo, we need you to pull 40 yards downfield. And I can see that offensive lineman go like, what the fuck? Like, when was that explained to me in the job description? Shouldn't I be a tight end or a wide receiver to be doing that shit? Hell no.
But yeah, I do like this defensive end group. I think I had I'll pull up the numbers really quickly here. I think I had, let me see how many players at defensive end that I had graded as starters for 2025 and versus 2026. I've got 17 defensive ends with starter grades out of 20 in this draft, and I've got like 8 or 9 for next year's group. So I would argue defensive end and QB and center are the 3 strongest positions. You've got Maoga, the Miami tackle, Proctor, Alabama, Lomu and Fanu, the 2 Utah tackles at left tackle, right tackle, Blake Miller, Carmona, who went back to Arkansas. You've got, I believe there's some guys in next year's group that could be decent. The Texas A&M tackle went back. I think it's 2 to 3 rounds deep, but it's not like it's a top heavy tackle draft next year, but it might be 2 or 3 rounds. It might be 2 rounds deep. It's not going to be 3 rounds deep, but it and then the rest of the positions feel like they're top heavy. Running back feels like it's top heavy outside of Baxter and Jeremiah Love. Receiver feels top heavy next year. You got Carnell Tate, you got Elijah Badger, and you've got Evan Stewart. Nobody else really excites me this point in the process. You got Delp and Luke Haas, Arkansas tight end. You got Corleone at defensive tackle. Yeah, same here. I agree on that. And then you look at the linebackers. You got Anthony Hill Jr., you've got Harold Perkins Jr., and you got some other guys. And then at corner, you've got Damani Jackson and the Michigan corner, and there's some other guys who went back, and Tacario Davis, but it's not a great group. It's not like a wow group next year. It just feels like it's top heavy at a lot of positions outside of defensive end, center, and quarterback.
He is a guy that I think can make some waves, but I think right now he's like a 3rd round prospect, but if he comes out and has a great year, I think he has untapped potential, and he realizes some of that. I think he can go in the 1st round.
But that's the thing. I would argue 2025 is a better draft than 2026, even though 2025 is deep defensively, deep running back, deep tight end. It's top heavy at QB, receiver, and tackle. And next year is pretty much the same thing with 26. It's deep at defensive end. It's deep at QB. It's deep at center. It's 2 rounds deep at tackle and everything. It's top heavy at everything else. So I would argue you can make the argument.
I've been seeing something going around that is because this QB class is perceived as weak, that teams could trade for enough ammunition to cut next year and get a.
Yeah, because next year you're going to have.
I think Jason Wood said it.
Yeah, let's not quote people.
5 or 6 guys are franchise-changing quarterbacks. Who the hell is going to trade out of that?
Because next year you're going to have Arch Manning, Nico Imaleva, Drew Aller, Garrett Nussmeier. That's just the top 4 guys. And then you've got other guys with rocket arms like Lenoris Sellers. You've got Cade Klubnik. You've got Carson Beck on the U, Miami Hurricanes. I'm not saying he's worthy of being drafted that high, but he's in the.
Really, so many people are living right now for next year.
So.
And he could be on the rise. So Jason Wood made such a good point in saying, if you're looking to trade back from the ammunition to trade up for one of these quarterbacks.
Oh, Caden Salter's taking over for Shadur at Colorado. Caden Salter, I had a 3rd round grade on him in the preseason. He transferred to Colorado. He's taken over for Shadur Sanders. He will be in next year's draft too.
Because this is something, this brings up an interesting point. Because I'm a lot higher on Shadur Sanders than most people.
Jalen Daniels is in next year's group, Kansas.
This is the thing that you look at and you say, now you get a guy that was a 3rd round pick that has a ton of potential going over Coach Prime after Coach Prime just got his son. I'm pretty sure he's going to take the number 2. Now you got this guy coming in and saying, oh, he could be one that he has potential to be.
And he might be better because here's the thing. Jordan Seaton dominated as a freshman. Phil Lodeholt, the former Oklahoma left tackle, was his offensive line coach. He did a tremendous job in year 1 at Colorado. And with Seaton, Phil Lodeholt was the Coach Prime Holt hired Phil Lodeholt to be the offensive line coach, former Vikings tackle. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I saw the thing on Amazon Prime. I saw Seton watching film with Coach Lodeholt, and yeah, I think Seton's going to be better in year 2, so that may end up causing Kadon Salter to go off next year. Colorado, there's just
This whole thing could cause a hell of a chain reaction. Say, you know, Sanders number 2, and then next year, who is the college that quarterbacks are going to start looking at and saying, hey, I'm a five-star quarterback, where do I want to go? I don't know. And now all of a sudden you might have a quarterback factory in the making. I mean, this may be a domino effect we may have to watch in the future.
yeah, because right now Julian Sayan's going to be competing with the freshman for the Ohio State QB job. If he gets that job, Sayan's got a chance to enter the Lagway Raiola conversation for 2027. But I'm not going to dive too much ahead of that.
Now that I've heard a lot of great things about Lagway, I've heard there are a lot of scouts that are really looking at him and really like him. So
I've heard the same thing with Raiola, and I've heard, and Julian Sayan's the other guy we got to watch for 27. But I'm saying 27 might end up being better than 26 or 25. It's too early to say that, but just based on the number of options and talent available, we could end up having a conversation about that class being the best of these 3 down the road.
I think we can say with certainty, though, between 25, 26, and 27, we've got some franchise guys in here that may very well end up being the future of the NFL.
And then 28, you're looking at Bryce Underwood. He's only a freshman at Michigan, coming at number 1 QB in high school, but he already has NFL hands. I can already look at his hand size and say, all right, he's got 10-inch hands, maybe 11-inch hands. Bryce Underwood, the freshman coming into Michigan. I mean, he was highly recruited by LSU, Ohio State, and Michigan. And Michigan. He was going to go to LSU initially. Ohio State tried to recruit him 3 times. He was going to go to LSU, but he ended up going to Michigan because Portnoy made a substantial donation to get him to come to Michigan. A substantial investment. Dave Portnoy of Barstool. He made a substantial contribution to get him to come.
Okay, because I heard he was going to LSU, then I heard there was some controversy, and I heard something else happened, so I just wanted to make sure there was a final destination.
Yeah, he's going to Michigan.
Okay.
And Colorado got a freshman to flip from USC, but they can ease that freshman in with Salter, because Colorado did get a 4-star, 5-star QB that was like the number 3 or number 4 QB in high school, but they can redshirt him and play Salter, and then end up with 3 QBs in 4 draft cycles potentially.
Yeah, and I think Colorado right now with Sanders and Salter have potentially 2 top 5 quarterbacks that are going to end up having in their program. And if they get a third, this will blow Colorado's program up massively when it comes to recruitment. I mean, all they need, as Chris, you and I both know, all they need is a couple big-time, $1 draft picks, top 5 guys, quarterbacks, and the whole thing.
Yeah, the top 4. Underwood was the number 1 QB. Keelan Russell was the number 2 QB. He might end up starting as a freshman too, along with Underwood. With Milroe gone, he may end up winning that QB job. Tavian St. Clair is going to compete with the QB Julian Sayan, the Ohio State freshman redshirt. Winner of that's going to be the Buckeyes starting QB. And you're looking at Julian Sayan or Tavian St. Clair entering 27 or 28, depends on who wins that competition. And then I know there's another guy, Jermon Odoms is going to be a 5-star recruited tackle, 6'6", 300, 320 going to SMU. I did not. Okay, so there's another. Hassan Longstreet's going to USC, but there was a QB that was going to go to Colorado. I know there was a QB in the 2025 recruiting class that committed to Colorado. I just wish I had the name in front of me. You know what? What I can do, I can pull up positional rankings. There we go. I'll get this quickly here, and then we'll get into the MLS stuff. But yeah, Malik Washington is number 5 QB. He's heading to Maryland. Julian Lewis. Julian Lewis was once the number 4 QB in the recruiting class, but he's dropped all the way down to number 10 on 27 Sports. But Julian Lewis was initially going to go to USC. He transferred to Georgia. So Julian Lewis will probably redshirt behind Salter, and he'll take over in 2026, if I had to guess.
Look, for me, SMU, they've had a few good quarterbacks, but for me, their biggest contribution is their offensive tackles. SMU has had some really good offensive tackles over the years. I've seen a couple right tackles come out. I've seen a couple really good left tackles come out. So, for me, SMU, they do have a really interesting habit of getting really good quarterbacks, and then those quarterbacks transfer, or quarterbacks transferring to them. So they're very good with the transfer portal.
Well, Dante Moore isn't guaranteed. Dante Moore should start at QB with Dylan Gabriel gone, but Oregon did recruit Achilles Smith Jr., the son of Achilles Smith. So if Achilles Smith Jr. wins that job, look out. Look out.
Dylan Gabriel, you know as well as I do, he was never my favorite quarterback. I never thought much of him. Achilles Smith was a guy when he came out, I was mixed on. Turned out, didn't work out too well. But I do think a lot of Oregon's program. I do like them as a program. And I think if they get a guy they can groom and not get him to transfer and just work with him for 3 years, especially somebody who's presumably been trained by his father, who is, like him or not, a top pick in the NFL draft at quarterback. He can do some great things. So I'm interested to see how Joe Smith Jr. ends up in this situation, because it is something, you know, he's got talent. But Kerry Smith never ever said he didn't have talent. They said he didn't quite get it mentally when he got to the NFL level. So him training somebody, his son, to go to a top 5 school, and then let that top 5 school fix some of the flaws that may exist. Okay, I got to look at this. I got to look at this positively. Because Willie Smith Jr., okay in my book. But when I'm evaluating him, Chris, you know as well as I do, I'm notorious for having like 12 to 14 first-round picks in every draft. Whenever I decide to rank the draft picks, when that happens, now we're talking something different. Because I'm very skeptical of everybody who enters the draft.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens. They're already really. They've got Gunnar Rivers at 8 for the QBs for 2027, but the only commitment in the 2027 class is Brady Edmonds, who's committed to Ohio State. He's in 2027. He played as a freshman last year. He was a sophomore this year. He'll be a junior next year. Yeah, he was on a team. Yeah, he.
What was his stats if he had any.
I'll pull that up.
I'm actually curious about that because I didn't hear anybody. I did not hear a soul talk about him. Which is fine because he's a freshman, you know.
Yeah, Gunnar Rivers did get his first SEC offer last month.
Okay. Oh, he did get an SEC offer. Okay.
Yeah, as a sophomore. And he went from 6'3", 180 to 6'3", 195.
Oh, okay. Now that's encouraging.
He, as a freshman, he threw for 3,077 yards, 29 touchdowns, and 4 interceptions. 29 touchdowns, 4 interceptions as a freshman. As a sophomore, he threw for 3,947 yards, 36 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. And his QB rating improved from 112.3 to 115.8.
Why hasn't he been covered by anybody covering the draft 2 years from now? Because,
most people are focused on the wrong things. They're focused on the high school recruiting class for this year and next year. They're not glued into 27 and 28 yet. But Gunnar Rivers was a guy who was on our radar very early in the process. Okay. And Gunnar Rivers, after getting his team to the playoffs as a freshman, he got his team to the state championship game as a sophomore where they lost to number 1 seed Jackson High 49-28. He was not the reason they lost that game. They just played a better opponent in the state championship, but they'll probably win one in the next 2 years with Rivers coaching that team. Okay? They just, Gunnar Rivers, I think he's going to be the top QB in 2027. I don't know what school. I don't want to watch the YouTube clip. I'm just curious what the school is. I'll check the comments here. Alabama, Auburn, and Texas A&M. Alabama, Auburn, and Texas A&M. He picked up his first SEC Auburn from Auburn. So Auburn already offered Gunnar Rivers a scholarship. Yeah, Auburn already offered him a scholarship. He went 6-5 as a freshman, and he got his team to the state title as a sophomore. That's a pretty good start for Gunnar.
And for me, Auburn is, I always say, Auburn is as conservative a football program offensively as you'll find, despite what offense they run. But at the same time, I have always respected Auburn quarterbacks because they always come away with a mental understanding of the game that's superior to some other people. Chris, you know this as well as I do. I was pounding the table for Bo Nix when he was a freshman.
Yep.
Look at what he did here. He doesn't have the physical abilities of some of his peers. Look what he did with Auburn. Look, he has the mind for it, and that's what Auburn does. They'll mentally do what needs to be done, and not just slow. I'm a quarterback. Yeah, well, that's not going to be too far. You can figure the rest of it out.
Okay, here we got some interests for Gunnar Rivers. There's only 5 schools that have offered him a scholarship, apparently. Auburn, Boston College, Miami, Florida, North Carolina State, and South Carolina. All 5 of those schools have offered Gunnar a scholarship. Those are the 5, according to 24/7 Sports. Those are the 5. And I think Auburn's probably the leader of that group right now.
If I was Gunnar Rivers, I would look at the 2 leaders would be Auburn and Miami, Florida.
Yeah.
Because Miami is very good at putting forth a great ability to get the best out of you as a talent. But Auburn is the best out of that group of preparing you mentally for the next level.
Yep.
That is so. With Gunner, I would say what's best here because, and he's in an interesting situation because his father was Philip Rivers, so he may say, "I've already got the physical part down, so you may want to go to Auburn," or "I want to enhance my physical proportions and go to maybe a foot." So it really is a tough decision for him. It's really breaking down.
Yeah, what do you think, William? I mean, we'll probably sign off after this and load the next stream, but yeah, it's very interesting conversation to have, I think. Because Gunner was a guy I was pretty high on early in the process because I found out he was starting in like September last year. So I made sure to put a mental note. This guy, he'll be draft eligible in 2030 or 2031. It's a long way away, but I got a feeling this guy is going to end up being just as good as his dad. Maybe. We'll see.
Yeah, and his dad, there was a decade there where his dad threw for more yards than Tom Brady and Peyton Manning. I can't remember what 10 years it was, but it was right in there someplace. But you know, with Philip Rivers, I mean, by 2030, I mean, he's going to have a whole football team out there with as many kids as he has. You know, I mean. But no, I mean, I see, you know, a lot of players like this, you know, and they have been, you know, groomed for this since they were little kids, you know. I mean, it's just one of those things to where, you know, that football IQ is, and everything is just, you know, ingrained into them, you know, and bred into them, obviously, you know. But yeah, I think he'll definitely be a good quarterback. I haven't seen a whole lot of him yet, but
yeah,
I think he'll be just fine. You know, as compared to his dad. You know, just stick around the league for a while. So.
Yeah. That will do it for the Super Bowl 59 game recap, the football edition. I'm going to let William do what he needs to do, but we loved having you on.
Real quick, for you and William, I want to say something, and it was something that Deion Sanders said, you know, when it comes to Shadur, that just fits here with Phil Rivers stuff. He is ready to take on any pressure from any NFL team. And when asked why, Leon responded, because he's a Sanders. And he's been hearing it since the day he was born. I can look at it from Philip Rivers' son as well. Guys, do you agree?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, we've got 13 people on X in the chat room. We appreciate that, guys. I'm just looking to see.
Yeah, and I did want to bring that up because Deion has done a lot of talking to me to grow, and a lot of it is warranted. A lot of what he says is stuff we can bring not only for Shadur, but other people. Something I also wanted to address, well, Chris, while you're looking up this other stuff.
I'm looking up notes for the MLS section of the show. Keep talking about the topic you want to talk about before I end the stream. I'm just looking up prep notes for
Will do. The big thing is he backed off when he was so against certain teams, I say certain team drafting Shadura, he is not saying, I'm just going to leave it up to the hand of God. That changed within the last few days. Well, Bill Musgrave was hired as the Browns quarterback coach. Why would that change anything? Look back at the Dallas Cowboys Super Bowl team. Deion said it a couple years ago. He had this backup quarterback, Billy. I think highly of Billy. Now I looked at Jimmy and I said, Billy, Jimmy, put Billy in. Let Billy throw a pass. Who was Billy? Billy Musgrave. Deion and Bill Musgrave were teammates. And Deion thought very highly of Bill Musgrave as a player, and to this day thinks very highly of a coach and as a person. That would have changed Deion's tune from saying, quote unquote, teams not drafting to we're going to leave it in God's hands. Right after the official promotion from offensive advisor to quarterback coach of Bill Musgrave. Bill Musgrave, Deion Sanders' former teammate, and a man he admires enough. He has admired for years since they were teammates. So Jimmy Johnson let him do it. Let him do it. Let him do it. The change, I think they know. The change was number one. And why I think they'd be sufficient with Shadura going number 3, I think Deion is comfortable and confident putting Shadura in the hands of Bill Musgrave. I think that a friend, a confidant, and he looks highly upon, is now in a position to look after his son. Can I be proven wrong?
Yeah, I mean, if Deion's building a factory, there's no question about that.
And let's look at it a little bit deeper than that. Okay?
Joey, we are ending at 1. I do.
Well, let's say, because we talked about here a few minutes ago, the Colorado thing, Deion said, you just said, Deion's playing the factory. He talks to Water now, then he just hears one quarterback going in the top 5 in a row. What's he going to be talking in? I think you got it right, Chris. He's creating a factory. You got it 100% right.
Yeah. So that from William Yanish, Joseph Potter, Chris Ransom. We will have more NFL content next week when we do battle the draft simulators, but that is going to end it for this NFL portion of the show. Thanks for joining us, William. I'll see you MLS